Chapter 622, One Crisis Resolved. Reverie _ The people nearby had strange expressions. People who were able to come here were at least at the spiritual pedestal tier, and often went to historic sites and abodes to toughen themselves, seeing plenty of strange things. However, a rabbit actually opened its mouth to speak, which still made them shockingly confused. Moreover, this rabbit was quite fierce, knocking down Mu Rongqing with a single kick. Mu Rongqing's strength was obvious to all. Xiao, Mu Rongqing jumped up, looked left and right, and said, "Who dares to assault this young master?" Seeing everyone's gazes focused on a large white rabbit, his face twitched as he cried out, "This damned rabbit knows how to talk. Mess your face up." The rabbit pushed off its feet, charging out, and began fighting with Mu Rongqing. Look at Uncle Rabbit's 18 eagle kick. Peng, 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 peng. The rabbit's speed was very fast. As it bounced repeatedly, its legs threw a flurry of kicks at Mu Rongqing. "Damned rabbit, this young master has no grievances nor grudges with you. Kick your sister." Mu Rongqing said furiously. "You dare insult your Uncle Rabbit, so who else is there to kick if not you?" The rabbit bawled, kicking ceaselessly. The rabbit might be bitten by Hunyo the entire day, looking like an uncontentious person, but that was only towards Hunyo alone. When it came to treating others, it was the standard ruffian rabbit, its mouth full of rascally words, rude and unreasonable. One man and one rabbit got into a brawl, soon rising into the sky and fighting fiercely. "No need to pay attention to them," Ling Han said with a smile. He perceived that Mu Rongqing had amazing martial arts talent, but he was also a silly person. It was better to let him and the ruffian rabbit fight it out and become brothers. After they've fought enough, they'll stop naturally. Zhu Xian'er learned Ling Han's phrase. Ling Han and Rain Emperor began talking about the things that happened in the 2 years. Rain Emperor suddenly said, "I think you have no need to worry about people attacking you because of the whereabouts of the divine treasure trove." "Why do you say?" Ling Han appeared very curious. When Yi Jian came to the Middle State not long ago, and went separately to Heaven's Sword Sect, Absolute Saber Sect, and the other ancient sections. Now, these sects announced jointly that no one is allowed to kill Wen Yi Jian, or else it would be making an enemy of the great sections. Presumably, when Yi Jian told those sects about information on the divine treasure trove and exchanged it for protection, Rain Emperor explained. "Oh, so there was actually such a thing." Ling Han pondered, and had to admit Wen Yi Jian's helplessness and resolution. Wen Yi Jian didn't have the Black Tower, so not to mention encountering a shattering void tier expert, even a deity transformation tier warrior could make him have nowhere to run. For him, the divine treasure trove not only had no benefits now, but also would restrict his development. Hiding silently in the mountains and forests for his entire life, would he have any prospects to advance into the shattering void tier and become a god afterwards? Since he couldn't become a god, then wouldn't the divine treasure trove be just empty words? Contrarily, handing over the coordinates of the divine treasure trove, he not only didn't lose a thing, but also was able to discuss some terms with the great sects, receiving some benefits. If his luck was nature-defying, after entering the god realm, he could still contest for that divine treasure trove. If he didn't have the Black Tower, perhaps he could only do the same. Now that the coordinates of the divine treasure trove fell into the hands of the great sects, it wasn't important for others to seize it anymore. If you couldn't even enter the shattering void tier, could you go to the god realm to dig up treasures? Wen Yi Jian's actions actually resolved a crisis for Ling Han. When Yi Jian also received the qualifications for direct entry into the academy, Rain Emperor went on. Ling Han nodded. Whether it was Wen Yi Jian's own strength, or his credit for selling the whereabouts of the divine treasure trove, to win a quota for direct entry was an easy thing to do. "Do you know the examination rules for entering the academy?" he asked. "Not sure at the moment, but since martial arts geniuses are to be picked, battle is unavoidable," Rain Emperor said indifferently, filled with assertiveness. Ling Han nodded. Rain Emperor lacked a complete art that would allow him to ultimately advance into the shattering void tier. On the path of martial arts, Rain Emperor already created his own fist technique and walked down his own path, no longer needing martial arts techniques, only mystical powers could improve his battle prowess. After talking for a while, Ling Han took out a large pot and began cooking food. As the alluring smell spread, not only did the people nearby drool inwardly, the man and the rabbit in the sky stopped fighting and descended, their eyes on the pot lid. Hunyo was fierce, jumping out to say, "Don't get any ideas about Hunyo's food." Quite the attitude on guarding her food. After the food was cooked, everyone began eating. Their group of people had formidable strength, and whether it was Ling Han, Hunyo, Rain Emperor, and Mu Rongqing, they all had the qualifications for a direct entry into the academy. Now that the four grouped together, they could even take out spiritual infant tier elites, so who would dare to provoke them? Thus, though people drooled inwardly as they watched and felt it even more strange there was a talking beast, no one came over to bother them. Mu Rongqing was silly as expected, and soon had an arm around the rabbit's shoulders as they called each other brothers. This made Hunyo mock him by saying that she was ashamed to be associated with beasts, making this guy quite gloomy. It was bustling here, with fights every day. The geniuses from all over the world were unconvinced with each other, starting to fight as they talked, because there were too many geniuses gathered. Some obviously didn't want to go, and those that had no qualifications to enter the academy also came. They set up shop nearby, selling all sorts of things. On the second day, Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing both went to the mountains and forests nearby to find beasts to battle. Maybe they could also obtain precious metals, spirit medicine, and other treasures. Otherwise, would they just sit here for half a year? Ling Han had just arrived, so he circled the surroundings enthusiastically. The outer area had large amounts of street stalls laid on the ground, laying out a good deal of items. Some were unremarkable low-level spirit medicine, some were ancient tools fished out from historical remains, and there were both usable and unusable ones. Everything was based on one's own discernment. Zhu Xian'er accompanied him by his side, while Hunyo held onto Ling Han's hand, appearing extremely impatient. When Ling Han had just taken a glance, the little girl would drag him away, making Ling Han extremely gloomy. Shopping was supposed to be women's favorite daily routine. Just look at Zhu Xian'er, she was so absorbed in it. Walking for a while, a group of people surrounding a small stall could be seen, appearing quite lively. Ling Han also pushed his way through it. Turned out everyone was interested in a bottle. This was an old thing. The tool's body was tattered, the designs on it blurred, and the bottleneck was missing a chunk, but despite it, it still gave people a grand and magnificent feeling. The stall owner was an old man with spiritual infant tier cultivation, making others not dare to seize it by force. "Old senior, what treasured tool is this?" Ling Han asked. "Refined celestial bottle," the old man said dully. Ling Han was startled. Refined celestial? Such big talk, to actually refine a divine spirit. But no matter how it looked, this ancient item couldn't possibly have such powers. The vein-like patterns on it almost completely faded. "What does it sell for?" he asked again. "If the price wasn't too high, it wouldn't hurt to take it as a toy." "Use treasured medicine as exchange, ones that can extend life," the old man said. Although he was very powerful, he was too old, with chi and blood exhausted, evidently without more than a few years left to live. For such a person, there was nothing more precious than lifespan-extending treasured medicine. Who didn't want to live long? Lifespan-extending treasured medicine was the most precious of spirit medicine, rarely seen on the market. No wonder, then, that this many people looked, but no one struck a deal. It wasn't that everyone didn't want to make a deal, but the old man's term was too high, such that no one could offer it. Even if they did have it, would it really be worth it to exchange for a broken bottle? Chapter 623, Contesting for the Bottle. Reverie _ Ling Han didn't really care. He possessed the Black Tower that could nurture spirit medicine extremely easily, and ginseng had the effect of strengthening one's energy and extending one's life, especially thousand-year-old ginseng, its effects even more outstanding. For him, thousand-year-old ginsengs were carrots. He'd pull as many out as needed, not at all distressed. "Everyone, don't fall for it." A man suddenly stood out, pointed at that bottle, and said, How could this possibly refine a divine spirit? The vein-like patterns are almost all effaced, so how much power could it possibly have remaining? Besides, how could there be a treasure in the mortal realm that refines gods? If it were truly so powerful, couldn't this person here crush Heaven's Sword Sect, Absolute Saber Sect, and more? Would they be lacking in treasured medicine? Everyone couldn't help but nod. This bottle was certainly out of the ordinary, but it was still broken. What power could it have left such that one would need to use the most precious life-extending treasured medicines to exchange for it? Who'd be willing to? Shopkeeper, make it cheaper. I've got 100 origin crystals here. How about it, trade? I've got 3 green Yang star pills. I'll use 5th tier azure dark gold to exchange. Everyone quoted a price that they personally could accept. This treasured tool was still quite attractive, even though it was already broken. With the martial intent almost worn away, it still had an imperishable presence circulating, which made them moved. No exchange. The old man persisted. He had not much life left and had no descendants, so he only wanted to live a few more years. Taking other treasures had no use, they could only be buried along with him. So, how about a 300-year-old fleeceflower root? Someone quoted a price. Fleeceflower root was a fine tonic, and 300-year-old one was even more extraordinary, being able to extend lifespan by at least 10 years or so. The old man revealed an expression of hesitation. This treasured medicine was lower than his expectations, but after being constantly deprecated by that man earlier, he, too, now felt that this bottle wouldn't sell for too high of a price, making him somewhat moved. This should be a replica of refined celestial bottle. The true item couldn't possibly fall into the mortal realm, and couldn't possibly be damaged. It was still that deprecating man earlier kept observing the bottle. Although it's not genuine and it's heavily damaged, it still has some research value. He paused shortly, and said, then I'll offer 2 stalks of 200-year-old dark cloud ginseng. Dark cloud ginseng was also a life-extending spirit medicine, and while 200-year-old dark cloud ginseng's life-extending effects were also around 10 years, this spirit medicine's effect couldn't be stacked. Consuming the first would have its full effects, the second would only have half the effect, and the effects of the ones after would be worse and worse. Thus, 2 dark cloud ginseng's effects would at most extend life by 15 years. However, for someone with 1 foot in the grave, living for 5 more years was an irresistible temptation. The old man's brow raised. He'd wanted to accept earlier, but now, with an offer of 5 more years to live, he was obviously more touched. Ling Han laughed, and opened up. I'll offer 1,000-year-old white jade ginseng. Hiss. Everyone gasped in astonishment. 1,000-year-old spirit ginseng, are you kidding? Even if ginsengs were spirit medicine of longevity, 1,000 years was the limit. Basically, there were very few ginsengs that could grow to such age. It was similar to how humans had 100 years lifespan. How many mortals could live fully to 100 years? Moreover, there were so many people who wanted to eat ginseng in the world. The greater its age, the rarer it was. 100 years old ginseng could be seen as a flower blossom tier expert, pitifully scarce. Above 500 years old was like a deity transformation tier elite, and 1,000 years old one was like a shattering void tier countable with one's fingers. This boy called out 1,000-year-old treasured medicine from the outset. It had to be a joke. Even that old man was somewhat unbelieving and said, youngster, are you serious? Ling Han raised his hand, then threw out a ginseng, and said, you can verify. The old man caught and examined the ginseng closely. In reality, he also didn't really know the good from the bad, but 1,000-year-old ginseng's medicinal powers were deep and could be sensed with just a small look. The old man was immediately certain that even if this wasn't 1,000 years old, it had at least 800 to 900 years of age. This was enough to extend his life more than 30 years. He was obviously exalted, and said, all right, this bottle belongs to you. Hold it, the deprecating man earlier spoke up, and gazed threateningly at Ling Han. He then paused momentarily before speaking, I'll offer 3 700 years old yellow dragon ginseng. 700 years old yellow dragon ginseng were obviously incomparable to 1,000 years old white jade ginseng, but with 3 stalks, it obviously surpassed the white jade ginseng. Everyone was puzzled. Didn't you say that this bottle was tattered and worthless? Why have you taken out 3 treasured medicines to trade for it? They immediately understood that the man earlier had intentionally deprecated it in order to decrease the competition and to win the treasured tool at the lowest price. Now, met with a powerful contender, he still wanted the treasured bottle, so he could only increase the price. For Ling Han, 1,000 years old ginseng was of little value, but he also didn't want to waste it arbitrarily. After all, this bottle was certainly too damaged, and other than referencing the techniques of the ancient times, it almost had no use. But why was this man so aggressive, even using unscrupulous means? Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth and looked towards the bottle. The bottle's body was certainly extremely damaged, and even if it could still unleash its might, it would probably break down first. However, at the bottom of the bottle was a layer of dazzling light, intense like a small sun, almost blinding his eyes. A treasure. Ling Han was stirred up inside. Those were vein-like patterns, so dazzling that even he couldn't bear it. They had to be remarkable. He no longer hesitated. Even if that bottle wasn't usable at all, the vein-like patterns alone were worth it. He threw out another 1,000 years old ginseng, and said, "Then I'll use 2. Counting on years, 3 700 years old yellow dragon ginsengs were above 2,000 years old white jade ginseng, but considering that the effects of the life-extending medicine reduced progressively, then the effect of 3 yellow dragon ginsengs were completely incomparable to 2,000 years old white jade ginsengs. Anyone could do such a calculation. The old man was obviously immediately touched, but still looked towards that man. He wanted to see whether he was going to raise the price. Anyway, he was going to sell to the highest bidder to maximize the gains. That man looked at Ling Han and said, "I'll add another heart protection pill." Heart protection pill, an extremely precious medicinal pill that could save the lives of martial artists below the deity transformation tier no matter how heavy their injury was, and help them slowly recover from their injuries. Amongst medium-level earth-grade medicinal pills, it was also amongst the finest. The old man instantly felt a rush of excitement. With such a spirit pill, he could adventure in historic sites, and maybe seize an opportunity to advance into the deity transformation tier, seizing 200 years of life more from the heavens. This was much more powerful than any life-extending spirit medicine. Ling Han laughed, competing with Alchemy Emperor using medicinal pills. Damn, heaven-grade medicinal pills he indeed lacked the materials to refine, but earth-grade medicinal pills he'd got a dime a dozen. He really wanted to compete? "I'll add 2 more heart protection pills," he said. Pooh. Many people in the surroundings already spurted out their saliva. These 2 guys were talking about earth-grade medicinal pills, so why did they feel so cheap like average quality goods? Chapter 624, Invitation. Reverie _ Fire was about to burst out of that man's gaze as he said, "I'm Nong Shuaiyun. My great-great ancestor is the heaven-grade alchemist Nong Bo Xian. Brat, are you sure you want to contest with me?" Everyone gave an "oh." No wonder this person could take out medium-level earth-grade medicinal pills. Turned out he had a heaven-grade great ancestor. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "We're buying something now. Obviously the one who offers the higher price wins. Why are you bringing up your great ancestor?" "Fine. You win." Nong Shuaiyun stared fiercely at Ling Han and turned to leave. Everyone couldn't help but break into hoots of laughter. This person had terrible moral character and intentionally deprecated the bottle earlier, making many people give up on the idea of contesting. Now that he couldn't win, he parted with threatening words, making a joke of himself for nothing. Ling Han smiled faintly, and threw a jade bottle towards the old man before he picked up the refined celestial bottle. The old man hurriedly opened the bottle cork and dumped out a medicinal pill to examine, but he wasn't an expert in this area. Although he saw the vein-like patterns closely interwoven on the medical pill, grand and magnificent, he was completely unaware of exactly what medicine it was. "Don't worry, I wouldn't cheat you," Ling Han said with a smile. The old man was obviously unbelieving, but firstly, the 2,000 years old white jade ginseng already reached his expected price, and secondly, these 2 medicinal pills also seemed extremely magnificent, unlikely to be of ordinary grade, so he was obviously profiting here anyway. Anyway, even if he accepted Nong Shui Yun's offer, how would he confirm that the other party's medicinal pills were genuine? He packed up the street stall. Since he'd already achieved his objective, it was obviously better to run off so as to avoid being targeted by others. Although he was at the spiritual infant tier, his chi and blood were severely exhausted, and his battle prowess was at most 100th of his peak days, so in reality, he was only equivalent to a flower blossom tier expert. The youngsters here were all geniuses, and a flower blossom tier elite among them could probably defeat him, so he was obviously afraid of being robbed. Established by customary convention, everyone spent money to buy things, but if someone were really to be robbed, who would actually come forward to stand up for him? So, the earlier he left, the more assured he'd be. Ling Han smiled as he weighed the bottle in his hand and examined it closely with the eye of truth, seeing that the bottom of the bottle had a subtle difference from the body of the bottle, probably not an integral part of the structure. The bottom of the bottle was older than the rest, and it was as if someone had intentionally made the bottle over it afterwards for the sake of concealing it. Interesting, he thought. It should be taken into Black Tower and studied carefully. He put away the bottle and saw that many people were staring at him. Wealth shouldn't be revealed inadvertently. He took out 2,000 years old ginsengs and 2 heart protection pills without a care, obviously making many people who wanted to make some ill-gotten gains have ideas about him. However, Ling Han didn't care. If anyone were to rob him, he wouldn't mind robbing them in turn till they didn't even have their underpants left. Young gentleman, my lady has sent you a written invitation, inviting you to the attend banquet at night. Just as Ling Han was about to leave, a beautiful servant girl walked over and delivered a pink invitation, which had a faint fragrance wafting from it. Ling Han didn't immediately accept, but instead asked, "Who's your lady?" "Boy, you don't even know Lady Small Peach?" Someone sneered. Lady Small Peach is Lady Yi Yun's personal servant girl. What, Lady Yi Yun? Wang family's pearl, Lady Yi Yun? Rumor has it, Lady Yi Yun is not only beautiful like a fairy, but also proficient in music, and even more so an exceptional talent of martial arts. At 9, she was recruited into the Azure Thunder sect as an exception, and although her reputation falls short of Dongling heirs, if we mention the 10 greatest beauties in the Middle State, she's definitely famous amongst them. Beautiful as a fairy, battle prowess like a goddess, an unparalleled woman. Everyone exclaimed with admiration. Wang Yiyun obviously received the direct entry to the Restore Heaven Academy and actually hosted a banquet nearby. How truly extravagant. The Wang family is also an influential martial arts family that has an extremely long legacy. It's said that the great ancestor of the Wang family is still alive, having heaven-tier cultivation, but it's probably impossible for them to take the last step, advancing into shattering void tier. With Wang family's financial ability, constructing a temporary palace wouldn't be something difficult. Heh, so envious. If only I could also go check out the banquet. There definitely isn't a lack of geniuses that have direct entry to the Restore Heaven Academy among the invitees. But why can this guy receive an invitation? Doesn't seem like he's all that impressive, right? Everyone looked at Ling Han, unable to discover anything surprising about him. Ling Han pondered, but accepted the invitation, and said, "All right, then I'll go have a look at night." The servant girl bowed and turned to leave. Everyone hurriedly made way, treating her with great respect, which magnified Wang Yiyun's dominance. It couldn't be helped that she received direct entry qualifications from the Restore Heaven Academy, right? This qualification was equivalent to dividing people into layers. Those who received qualification were first grade, and those who didn't were second and third grade. Boy, let Uncle Rabbit see that bottle. The rabbit suddenly became interested in that bottle. Oh, why? Ling Han asked thoughtlessly. Earlier, it was that known whatever, and now someone's inviting you to attend a banquet. It's obviously not because they know of your strength, but because they're targeting that bottle. At the banquet, they'll definitely force you to hand it over, so Uncle Rabbit's become interested, the rabbit said. Ling Han was astounded, and said, your intelligence surprisingly isn't low. Of course, Uncle Rabbit's brain is unprecedented in the last 500 years and unseen in the future 500 years, of course it's tip-top. Wait, you mean, you always thought that Uncle Rabbit was a joke? The rabbit suddenly came to a realization. Ling Han curled his lips, and said, you said that yourself. You dare insult your Uncle Rabbit, I'll bestow you a bloody face. Ah. The rabbit thought to sharpen its claws and pounce at Ling Han, but Hu Niu bit onto its tail by surprise, making it scream in pain again. Don't be harsh to Niu's Ling, or else Niu'll eat you. Hu Niu looked extremely fierce. The rabbit feared no one but Hu Niu, instantly keeping silent. Since there was still some time before night, Ling Han came to a remote place, and then flashed into the Black Tower. Where's that guy? The rabbit opened wide its bright red eyes. There, walked into the forest. Hu Niu cooked up a lie casually. The rabbit was unbelieving, but Ling Han certainly disappeared without a trace. It felt extremely strange. After entering the Black Tower, Ling Han began studying the refined celestial bottle. This definitely couldn't refine celestials. Ling Han said inwardly, and resolutely, Pa. He shattered the body of the bottle. As expected, the body of the bottle was certainly of inferior quality, at most equivalent to 4th-tier rare metals. With Ling Han's current physique and brute force, it was easily smashed into pieces. Wang, the bottom of the bottle floated into the air. Complex vein-like patterns could be seen on the face that was originally facing the inside of the bottle, and they looked like Dao flowers, making one lost in thought at first glance. What is this thing? Ling Han said, extremely surprised. Chapter 625, Heaven Transformation Bowl. Reverie _ Whether it was too lazy to pay attention or lost its memory and didn't know at all, the small tower didn't respond. Ling Han didn't receive a reply, but wasn't disappointed. He originally asked casually, and didn't really expect to receive an answer. He carefully studied these vein-like patterns, deliberating over the profoundness within. I seem to somewhat understand, Ling Han said to himself. The bottom of this bottle itself was actually a spirit tool. After he poured in his divine sense, the spirit tool's mysteriousness emerged before him. That old man said this was refined celestial bottle, obviously too overblown. But, the bottom of this bottle is flat on the outside and dented on the inside. In fact, it's a bowl. It has its own space internally and can absorb all things to refine, turning them into the most original essence energy. Isn't this equivalent to refining origin crystals? Ling Han was extremely surprised. He kept examining this bowl. It only looked like a tiny stone bowl. Its rim was only the size of a palm, but the inside could form an extremely large space, quite miraculous. He pulled out 5 spirit medicines and then unleashed the stone bowl. As spirit power surged within, the vein-like patterns on the bowl's body immediately lit up, and the entire stone bowl became more resplendent, emitting a powerful attraction. Those 5 spirit medicines immediately flew into the air, and they entered into the bowl. As expected, the internal part had another space. The spirit medicine was obviously larger than the stone bowl, but the stone bowl devoured it completely without difficulty. In a short while, Ling Han smelled a light fragrance that spread from within the stone bowl. Looking again, he saw that the spirit medicine was no longer within the bowl, but had turned into a drop of light green liquid, emitting a mentally refreshing fragrance. Those were 5 spirit medicines, and each one was of 5th tier, but were actually condensed into a drop of medicinal liquid. This was too ridiculous. Ling Han withdrew his origin power. The stone bowl's brilliance instantly faded, becoming extremely plain and looking like an old-fashioned ancient tableware. He turned over the stone bowl and poured it towards his own mouth. That light green liquid slowly fell, landing with a paw into his mouth. Instantly, an indescribable fragrance overflowed in his mouth, making him feel as if he were about to ascend to heaven and become an immortal. However, even more surprising was the extremely pure energy that followed down his throat and entered his stomach, and then spread, circulating all over his body. Such pure medicinal power! Ling Han exclaimed. Normally speaking, no matter whether it was spirit medicine or medicinal pills, the majority could only have the effect of accumulating origin power. However, starting from the flower blossom tier, what martial artists needed more was the comprehension of Tao. For example, at the flower blossom tier, if they wanted their Tao flower to grow, they had to engrave martial intent on it. This was nourishment. A powerful alchemist such as Ling Han could extract the heaven and earth's intent from the medicinal ingredients, and after consuming it, he could connect with the Tao, from there advancing the progression of martial arts. However, this stone bowl also had the same effect. The spiritual liquid had vein-like patterns of the Tao, extremely surprising. It's equivalent to a great alchemist. Moreover, after the 5th tier ingredients were purified, it actually reached the effects of the 6th tier. This even surpasses the effects of medicinal pills. Not only medicinal ingredients can be refined, even spirit stones and rare metals too. Even living creatures. I understand now why forebears sealed it in another spirit tool to conceal its existence. This thing is truly nature-defying, and even upsets the peace of nature. If it fell into the hands of an immoral person, refining the common people to nourish oneself, that would be too unjust. Ling Han sighed. The forebears were probably unwilling to destroy such a priceless treasure and left this pearl in the dark, sealing it within another spirit tool. Tools themselves have no distinction of good or bad, it all depends on the user's intentions, Ling Han said sternly. I definitely won't use this to plot against the world's people, or else, even if I could receive an endless stream of spiritual liquid, with my heart covered by a demonic temptation, how far would I be able to advance in martial arts? He cultivated the road of the strongest, not the heartless nor the slaughterer. Using this stone bowl to kill all living things would actually rather suit the latter too. Small tower, I think I've obtained an incredible thing. Ling Han said with a smile. Small tower surfaced and stared at the stone bowl for a while. It said, I remember now. This should be Heaven Transformation Bowl, but it's definitely not genuine. In my blurry memories, Heaven Transformation Bowl was shattered long ago. This is a decent imitation. If you give it to me, I can extract 7 streaks of source power. Just 7 streaks? Ling Han pondered, and said, that large primal chaos rock, how much source power did you extract? 9 streaks, Small Tower said calmly. This bowl was actually not as powerful as that primal chaos rock? Wait, primal chaos rock was what Azura Demon Emperor was crazy for, and the size of that thing? This stone bowl was only so big, and 7 streaks of source power could be extracted. It was clear the quality of it was no less inferior. It was similar to comparing a chunk of divine metal that was only 1.5 kilograms, forged into a 10th tier spirit tool, and another chunk of divine metal weighing 5 kilograms but in its primitive form. Viewed from a different angle, each item's value was different. Ling Han was surprised. This stone bowl couldn't replace medicinal pills, because it could only refine the purest of energy, which was unlike medicinal pills, which had a wide variety with various uses. However, with a purifying effect that made 5th tier medicinal ingredients possess the effects of 6th tier ingredients, the uses were much greater. There was too much low-level spirit medicine within the Black Tower. Originally, it was without much use, but now, purifying it with the Heaven Transformation Bowl, 3rd tier became 4th tier, and 4th tier became 5th tier. The junk could be reused. Ling Han carried out a test. He pulled out large amounts of 3rd tier medicinal ingredients and absorbed them into Heaven Transformation Bowl to purify, and they soon turned into 30 drops of spiritual liquid. However, he didn't stop, and continued to activate Heaven Transformation Bowl. The spiritual liquid fused once again, purifying, and became 1 drop. He tasted it, and couldn't help but reveal a smile. This was equivalent to a 2-star origin crystal but more easy to absorb as it was directly consumed into the body. 2-star origin crystals could only be refined spiritual pedestal tier experts, and was equivalent to 5th tier treasured medicine. 3rd tier medicinal ingredients turned into 5th tier, although pathetically small in amount, it was still a qualitative change. Ling Han was extremely pleased. Black Tower on top of Heaven Transformation Bowl was an absolute perfect match. With a flash, he exited the Black Tower. The rabbit saw it, and couldn't help but shout loudly, "Strange, how did this guy suddenly appear?" Ling Han laughed mischievously, and said, "My Qinggong is getting more and more kick-ass." This definitely wasn't Qinggong. The rabbit was certain. With its sensing ability that was one large tier higher than its cultivation, if Ling Han were to leap over from afar, it definitely would be able to detect it. "It's about time, we can go to the banquet," Ling Han said with a smile. The three departed. They had inquired earlier, so they knew where to head now. After passing through a forest, a private manor could be seen occupying a large space, and there was actually a lake inside. It was definitely constructed recently. The walls and bricks were completely brand new. The Wang family truly spent a great deal. Their darling daughter was cultivating here, so they constructed a private manor here. Not only so, starting from the entrance was a road laid with limestone that extended for several kilometers, surrounded by forest on both sides. A carriage appeared, rushing fast. The coachman shouted harshly, "Move to the side." Chapter 626, Borrowing the Carriage. Reverie _ Ling Han didn't mind making way, but this coachman not only shouted at him, but actually lashed at them with a whip, appearing extremely arrogant and overbearing. And this was only a coachman. If the coachman was so unbridled and domineering, then what kind of person was the master? Ling Han frowned, and pointed out with the index finger of his right hand, showing no anger. The finger touched the whip lightly, but this spirit snake-like whip was immediately as if it had been hit where it hurt, withering all of a sudden. Impudence. The coachman, who had a chilling gaze, raised the whip, and was about to lash at them once again. "Want to go a second time?" Ling Han reached out, and snatched the whip that hadn't been retrieved in time, pulling forcefully. The coachman was instantly sent flying, and the terrifying origin power damaged the carriage considerably through the whip. The carriage immediately stopped, and the coachman also fell into the thicket on the sides, letting out groans. "Ma Tong, why did the carriage stop?" From inside the carriage, a youngster's voice sounded, somewhat displeased. "Have we already arrived?" "Young master, we're almost there. However, a few arrogant ones blocked the road, so I tried to chase them away and was injured by one of them who attacked." The coachman, who stood up with some difficulty, made bogus accusations. "Humph." The carriage opened, and a lanky man disembarked. He was quite young, looking only around 24 to 25, and had divine light wound around his entire body, appearing extremely formidable. He, who looked full of pride, swept a glance at Ling Han and the other two, and the proud look he wore became even more intense. "A bunch of country bumpkins that don't even have a carriage, could you guys also possibly want to attend Fairy Yun's banquet?" he asked. "So what if we are?" Ling Han said indifferently. "Letting you country bumpkins attend the banquet is absolutely humiliating me," that youngster said coldly. "On top of the fact you guys harmed my coachman, if I don't act to teach you guys a lesson, then how could this acceptable? As expected, like master, like servant. If he weren't used to acting unbridled and domineering, why would that coachman attack to injure others without saying a word?" Ling Han cracked a smile, and said to Zhu Xian, encountering such an arrogant person, shouldn't he need a beating? He should. Zhu Xian nodded with a smile. She obviously believed in Ling Han's strength, and to say the least, even if they encountered a shattering void tier expert, didn't they have the Black Tower? Moreover, Feng Peiyun was Ling Han's sworn brother. If Ling Han never acted unbridled and domineering with a mighty shattering void tier watching his back, how were other people qualified to? This young master is truly curious where you country bumpkins crawled out from, without a carriage to ride and looking extremely arrogant. It really upsets this young master terribly. That young man leapt off the carriage. He had a majestic gait, with a shockingly imposing presence. "Don't say that this young master bullied you guys. This young master's name is Wuxia Cheng," he said loftily. Ling Han laughed, and said, "Should I cooperate with you and reveal an expression of awe and veneration?" "What, you've actually never heard of this young master's name?" Wuxia Chronicles was startled, and his gaze instantly turned baleful. "Unforgivable, you've actually never heard this young master's name." "Xiao," he dashed out and attacked Ling Han. As he reached out with his right hand, silver light bound it with closely interwoven vein-like patterns, making it look as if it had turned into a metal arm that kept enlarging, emitting a terrifying presence. In all honesty, this person's strength was truly impressive, and could be called the finest amongst the flower blossom tier. Unfortunately, he encountered Ling Han as his opponent. Ling Han casually reached out and grabbed Wuxia Chronicles by the chest, forcibly lifting him up. As Wuxia Chronicles still looked full of disbelief, Ling lashed out repeatedly. Pa, 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 sounds of slaps on the face could be heard. "Damn, see if this bastard can't be convinced with a beating." The ruffian rabbit shouted on the side while waving his small front claws, wishing to charge up and strike violently. Ling Han turned his head, and said, "Rabbit, speak more civilizedly, don't lead the kid astray. Hit him, beat this bastard to death." Hunyo also hooted. The rabbit shrugged its shoulders as if to show that Uncle Rabbit wasn't even leading the little girl astray. She had originally already been insanely violent. The teeth marks all over Uncle Rabbit's butt proved it. Ling Han casually threw Wuxia Chronicles to the side, and said, "This guy's right. If we don't go to the banquet on a carriage, it'll feel like our status is instantly lowered by a level. Come, 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 everyone get on the carriage." Wuxia Chronicles was furious beyond belief. These three people were actually going to seize his carriage? Of course their status was going to be raised. This carriage was his family's antique, a treasure passed down since several thousand years. At the time, it was Zhuo Li's ancestors' war chariot when they were on a world expedition. He was also frightened and puzzled. Ling Han was clearly at the flower blossom tier as he was, but why could he not even match one of Ling Han's moves? Could such a guy be the biggest genius, qualified for direct entry into the Restore Heaven Academy? But why hadn't he ever heard of him before? Under the terror and rage, he even forgot what an inconceivable thing it was for a rabbit to talk. Zhu Xian and Hunyo gladly sat on the carriage. The rabbit wanted to get on it as well, but Ling Han threw it in front of the carriage, and the ground-burst wolf instantly barked and snapped its teeth at the rabbit. "Your freaking uncle." The rabbit hurriedly took to its heels. The ground-burst wolf chased, and the carriage was instantly pulled along, traveling swift forwards. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh loudly, but more so felt it strange. The rabbit's strength obviously far surpassed that of the ground-burst wolf, which had just entered into flower blossom tier. Emitting a little bit of coercive pressure, it could frighten the wits out of this beast wolf. However, it chose to run to amuse Hunyo. Could the rabbit know Hunyo's origins? Otherwise, why would this ruffian rabbit treat Hunyo so nicely, not retaliating when hit or insulted, and simply screaming in pain when bitten? And now, it pretended to be in a tight corner to amuse Hunyo. The pitiful Wuxia Chronicles, who was tossed by Ling Han, not only dirty but also with torn clothes, had to take out and change into a new pair of clothes from a spatial ring, bawling as he changed. The carriage traveled swiftly. It wasn't too far from the private manor here, so they arrived in a short while. Ling Han tightened the reins forcefully, and that ground-burst wolf's expression became twisted, its teeth bared as it forcibly halted its movement. It was still not resigned, wanting to turn to tear with its teeth, but Hunyo jumped out and her feet landed right on its head. It was originally in a foul mood, and now, being stepped on the head, it immediately wanted to bite this damned small human to death. However, before it opened its mouth, it felt an extremely terrifying presence, instantly making it prostrate on the ground in fright, wagging its tail ingratiatingly. This wasn't a wolf anymore. It was clearly a stupid dog. Young masters Wuxia. For sturdy guards and an old butler were welcoming the guests, and seeing the carriage arrive, they also came over. However, when they saw Ling Han and the other two walking out the carriage, they couldn't help but feel it strange. Wasn't this Wuxia family's war chariot? Chapter 627, Bent. Reverie _ Wuxia? Ling Han laughed. He invented nonsense thoughtlessly as he said, that guy suddenly took a fancy for his coachman and decided to elope with him, so he urged me to attend the banquet in his place. The old butler was astounded. He'd seen Wuxia Lucheng a few times, and each time, Wuxia Lucheng would come for the lady of the house, earnestly pursuing her, so why did he suddenly take a fancy for his own coachman? Could it be that when the lady rejected him, she was too cold, which led to too great of a shock for Wuxia Lucheng's, warping his view on life, bending it forcibly? May I ask how to address this young master? He asked. Anyway, his duty was to welcome guests, and whoever came over on this carriage would be qualified to enter the private manor. This was the rule, which he had to obey. Han Lin. Ling Han used a pseudonym again, not that he cared whether or not he'd be exposed by others. So, it's young Master Han, please. The old butler gesticulated to proceed, and a sturdy guard immediately came over to take Ling Han and them in. Hold it. Hold it. Wuxia Lucheng and his coachman ran over together at that time. Because of being injured by Ling Han, they supported each other with an arm, looking, well, very intimate. Could it be true the two were really bent together? The old butler instinctively felt an aversive chill. He'd heard that some men swung this way, but never would have thought to personally witness it, making his old face contort. He even took a few steps back, as if afraid of being infected. After retreating to a safe distance, he asked, Young Masters Wuxia? That person seized my carriage, stop him. Don't let that wild person enter. He definitely came to start trouble. Wuxia Lucheng himself couldn't rival Ling Han, and could only pin his hopes on the old butler. This was a spiritual infant tier elite who'd crossed into this tier countless years ago. Although he'd been delayed in advancing into the deity transformation tier, he improved upon this tier extremely firmly, his battle prowess terrifying. The old butler gave an "oh" and placed his sight on Ling Han, revealing a baleful look. He said, Young Master Han, are young Master's Wuxia's words inconsistent with the facts? Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, completely inconsistent. For a young and promising, humble and courteous person like me, how could I possibly be a wild person? I'm going to sue him for slander. Senior, please uphold the justice. This. Wuxia Lucheng almost hacked out blood in anger. You're damned humble and courteous. He pointed at the wounds on his body, and said, Wasn't this from your beating? The coachman also nodded hurriedly, and with an aggrieved look, he leaned into Wuxia Lucheng's chest, timid and helpless, appearing extremely resentful. Fuck, this is blinding. Such a scene was something even the old butler didn't dare to look at for too long. Hurriedly casting away his glance, he said to Ling Han, Young Master Han, rules are rules. Since young Master's Wuxia didn't let you attend the banquet in his place, then please show your personal invitation, or else this old man can only chase young Master Han away. How could a country bumpkin receive an invitation? He definitely wanted to sneak in. Wuxia Lucheng discredited Ling Han. Ta, another carriage arrived, and out of it walked a man with an imposing appearance and a ravishingly beautiful girl by his side. The two didn't look like couple, but rather brother and sister. That man was first startled, and then asked curiously, isn't this Wuxia? Huh, what do you look so miserable? Wuxia Lucheng was most afraid of having his scars exposed by others, so when he heard him, he simply snorted, and said, Mind your own business. Don't you know that I, Li Feng Yu, love the most to meddle in others' businesses and watch the fun? The man laughed loudly. He called over the beauty to his side, and said, Younger sister, let's get a stool and some pumpkin seeds, cracking some while we watch the show. Brother. That beauty glared at him. Her physique was ample and touching, and she was extremely bright and beautiful. She truly had no way to handle her brother, who never appeared proper all day long. And, Zwolo, you're holding on to this person so tightly, could there be a secret between you guys that can't bear the light of day? Li Fengyu looked at the coachman who was timidly leaning into Wuxia Chronicles' chest, instantly looking full of alarm. Wuxia Chronicles was first startled, and then discovered that the coachman was actually leaning on his chest, instantly making him feel sick. He hurriedly pushed the other person away, appearing disgusted. Ling Han shook his head, and said, "Cast aside the birdie heartlessly, how deeply deserving of disdain." So, it turns out Wuxia actually had this sort of liking, and in order to cover it, he intentionally treated the other, coldly. Lover. Li Fengyu was surprised and startled. The old butler's throat trembled, he wanted to puke. This generation's geniuses appeared like bamboo shoots after a spring rain, each one stronger than the previous, but it was way too Macedo even play in such ways. "You guys," Wuxia Chronicles roared angrily. "I'll kill you guys. I'll kill you guys." Ling Han intentionally sighed, and said, with a secret exposed, "You become furious with shame?" "Sigh, this isn't much, really. Each person has the right to love others, so as long as one likes it, why care about how the world views it?" "Yes. Yes." Li Fengyu agreed from the bottom of his heart. Wuxia Chronicles trembled with anger. He wasn't at all bent, he still wanted to pursue Wang family's beloved daughter. However, if news of him muddling hopelessly with other men spread, would he still have hope? "This brother here, let's have a good chat." Li Fengyu's expression had gossip written all over it. The contents of this good chat was definitely Wuxia and the coachman's unspeakable secret. Ling Han took out an invitation and handed it to the old butler whilst walking towards Li Fengyu, and said with a smile, "All right. Don't talk about it." Wuxia Chronicles hurriedly shouted. Ling Han turned his head, and said, "Don't talk about what?" "Don't talk about the things between me and him." Wuxia Chronicles immediately shouted without thinking. Ling Han nodded, and said, "Don't worry, I won't. I most dislike talking about someone's secrets behind their back." Li Fengyu instantly gave an "oh." This time it was truly certain even Wuxia Chronicles himself admitted it. The old butler wanted to puke again. "No. No." After staring blankly for a while, Wuxia Chronicles finally came to his senses. There wasn't anything originally, but now that he argued, he instead admitted his own status as a bent male, instantly shouting repeatedly. "Say no more, I understand." Li Fengyu nodded sternly, and said, "Wuxia, don't worry, your secret is with me, and definitely won't be told to a third person. Believe your freaking ghost. The sneaky smile on your damned face can't even be contained. Moreover, who didn't know your nickname, Li Big Mouth? You damn sure won't tell a third person, but tell 300 people, even 3,000 people." Wuxia Chronicles hurriedly chased over. He had to stop Li Fengyu from talking nonsense, but he just ran 2 steps when he felt his legs go soft, immediately falling towards the ground. "Young master." The coachman hurriedly threw himself at Wuxia Chronicles and caught him. "Hero saves the beauty," Li Fengyu said once he saw it. "Filthy, really too filthy." However, the expression on his face was beyond excitement. The trait of Li Big Mouth already began to burn with rage. The old butler couldn't bear it, and with a wah, he puked. The youngsters nowadays were truly beyond understanding. Chapter 628, An Ugly Person with an Even Uglier Heart. Reverie _ Ling Han already walked past the entrance, with a sturdy man leading them towards the place of the banquet. "Brother Han, it was you just now, right?" Li Fengyu's sister was constantly watching indifferently from the side, yet suddenly spoke up. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "Don't you accuse me wrongly." He certainly activated the annihilating dragon star arrow and gave Wuxia Chronicles a shot. It should have been extremely covert, but she actually saw through it. Li Fengyu laughed loudly, and said, "In front of my sister, don't you think of concealing any secrets. She's naturally endowed with an extremely shocking perception." "Brother," Li Fengyu's sister said, displeased. They'd just met, and he already divulged her trump card. Li Fengyu coughed, and said, "Come, let me introduce you, here is my sister Li Zixian. Sigh, she's soon to pass 20, but hasn't found a husband yet. Her standards are beyond reach, with no genius or exceptional talent to her liking, worrying this brother to death." As expected, Li Big Mouth. "Brother." Li Zixian couldn't help but blush and stomp her feet. Ling Han laughed loudly. With such an older brother, what sort of experience would it really be like? He also introduced himself. "I am Ling Han, this is my friend Zhu Xian, and this is Hunyo. That over there is the ruffian rabbit." "Ruffian what? You in charge of who's a ruffian?" "Your freaking uncle ah." The rabbit was immediately displeased, but being bitten on the tail by Hunyo, it instantly screamed in pain. The Li siblings were instantly shocked. This large white rabbit actually opened its mouth to talk. Ling Han nodded, and said, "Yes, this damned rabbit knows how to talk." "Let go, Uncle Rabbit's tail that was grown out with great difficulty can't get any shorter," the rabbit screeched. "Don't be rude to Nyo's Ling Han." Hunyo chided it. "I really don't know what's so good about this guy," the rabbit muttered. The Li siblings still hadn't come back to their senses from such a shock, feeling their outlook on life collapse. There was actually a beast that knew how to talk. They actually forgot to think about the now obvious fact that Ling Han used a pseudonym. Under the sturdy man's guidance, they soon arrived at the lake, seeing long tables set up here. Food and fine wine filled the tables, yet there was not a single chair. People held plates and fetched some food from the table, walking while eating, and occasionally drinking wine. For martial artists, standing for a few days wasn't tiring, so it didn't matter whether there were chairs or not. Without a fixed seat, people wouldn't be displeased because someone else had a better spot. Moreover, walking while eating could make everyone communicate and converse better. Ling Han nodded inwardly. Although he hadn't met Wang family's Pearl, her remarkableness was already demonstrated. Seeing so many people, Li Fengyu's heart of gossip immediately burned fiercely as he said, "Brother Ling, Lady Zhu, sister, you guys find a place to eat, I'm going to find a few people to have a chat." Without waiting for Ling Han and the others to respond, he already dashed out. If he suppressed it any longer, he'd have internal injuries. "Poor Wuxia Chronicles," Ling Han said inwardly, yet secretly enjoyed it served him right for being such an unpleasant person. "Eat. Eat. Eat." Seeing so much food, Hunyo's eyes instantly glowed, but after smelling it with her small nose, she couldn't help but be disappointed. "It's not fragrant at all." Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "It's free anyway. Can't be many good things if it's free, just eat casually." "Alright, Nyo will eat casually." Hunyo sighed. The two came to a table and began to fill their plates, instantly frightening people on the sides. "Were you guys the reincarnation of hungry ghosts, filling up such a tall plate, not afraid of bursting?" "Eat casually." "Yes." Hearing the two eat and talk like this, the people nearby were speechless. Wang family took out a great deal this time. Many foods were made from high-level beast meat and 4th-tier and 5th-tier spirit fruits, taking any bit of it would sell for a sky-high price. However, as these two people saw it, it didn't appear to their liking at all. More importantly, one should eat less if it wasn't to one's liking, yet they still filled up so much. After a while, Wuxia Chronicles also walked in. This time, he didn't have the coachman accompanying him. Walking alone, he'd already restored his calm, and became that arrogant genius earlier. However, everyone immediately pointed at him, discussing animatedly, and many people even wore a disdainful look. This bent man. Wuxia Chronicles almost passed out from anger. He only arrived a little late, yet Li Fengyu had already spread his orientation to the whole place. Li Big Mouth, truly too big of a mouth. He forcibly composed himself and thought that rumors stopped with the intelligent. The more he argued, the more unclear it would be. A fragrant breeze could be smelled as a girl walked over. After she glanced over Zhu Xian's face, she spoke bitingly, "Tisk, Looks pretty good from afar, but this face, sigh. This great physique was really given to the wrong person. Zhu Xian'er didn't take it to heart. Her appearance was unparalleled, definitely the number one in the world, rarely seen in 10,000 years. Moreover, a girl would dress up for the man who loved her. Her beauty needed only blossom for Ling Han, and she'd never thought of letting others admire her exceptional beauty. Ling Han's gaze, however, turned cold. With his temperament for protecting those close to him, even if Zhu Xian'er was only a normal friend, he wouldn't allow her to suffer the slight of others, let alone now that the two of them were close to being a couple. Ugly girl, what did you say? Ling Han tossed a glare. You ugly girl? That girl's expression turned pale, and she immediately burst into anger. He dared to insult her as an ugly girl? She was Jing Xuan, and countless men were intoxicated by her, but now, someone actually called her ugly to her face? Not only is your face ugly, your heart is ugly too, ruined my appetite. Ling Han sighed. People said, a feast for the eyes, but now, she actually ruined his appetite, so how ugly did she have to have such destructive power? Jing Xuan trembled in anger, feeling that Ling Han's words were truly like ice, not only cold, but cutting her painfully. She saw Zhu Xian'er's figure from behind earlier, and instantly felt put to shame and unable to compare with that beauty that was in the other's bones. She couldn't help but walk over to get a careful look. Who would have expected that Zhu Xian'er actually had an extremely ordinary face, which instantly relieved her inside, and at the same time, she couldn't help but mock her. However, she didn't faze Zhu Xian'er, and almost exploded from anger herself. Fairy Jing, what's wrong? Her escorts immediately surrounded over, there were a dozen in before their eyes. This person wanted to harass me. Jing Xuan pointed at Ling Han. Ling Han instantly shivered, and said, hey, don't disparage my tastes. Even if I had a wolf-like urge, I wouldn't take a fancy to you. You can dream on. Jing Xuan was about to pass out from anger. How could there be such a person with a tongue like a sharp blade, piercing her all over the body? Nonsense. An escort jumped out. Hurry up and kneel down to apologize to Fairy Jing, or else, I, Zhu Xiaotian, will definitely not forgive you. Chapter 629, Talk of a Marriage. Reverie _ Ling Han smiled, and said to Hunyo, someone's disturbing our meal, what to do? Send them all flying. Hunyo said fiercely. Then do you want to warm up a bit? Ling Han asked. All right. Hunyo put down her plate. Seeing everyone eyeing them covetously, she couldn't help but ask, you guys want to rob Nyo's food? On the second thought, she said with a smile, not delicious anyway, no matter. So you don't dare to act yourself, letting a little girl take the field? Zhu Xiaotian sneered. You're truly deserving of contempt. Asking for a beating. Hunyo charged out, and as her small figure flashed, she already appeared before Zhu Xiaotian, firing a punch. Pa! It hit Zhu Xiaotian right in the face, instantly making him have a nosebleed. Once she attacked, everyone was shocked. This little girl's speed was so fast, truly surprising. Nyo will knock you all down. Once Hunyo attacked, she couldn't stop. Her body turned into lightning and flashed in the crowd, pa, sending people flying one after another like scarecrows. However, it was only the time of a few breaths, yet all those dozen escorts were knocked down by Hunyo, lying on the ground and groaning in pain. Jing Xuan's body was as if it was frozen. She'd definitely never expected a little girl to be so strong, instantly defeating her pursuers. Although her pursuers were definitely not limited to this amount, these were strongest ones, or else they wouldn't have qualified to be invited here. Freak! Where did this little girl come from? With such a great commotion, the others obviously saw it, quite a few were astounded, while some others revealed an interested look. So it's young Master Han. A girl walked over gracefully, her figure lithe, swaying gently. Her appearance was extremely beautiful, her skin like white jade and black hair like a waterfall, glowing bright. She was extremely beautiful. She walked over from afar, and the people in her way made way from both sides one after another, their expressions feverish and intoxicated. She was a beauty 1 grade higher than Jing Xuan. Ling Han looked at her and said, "You are." That girl smiled faintly, and it was instantly like 100 blowers in blossom, bright and beautiful. She said, "Nong man, also the one who invited you over on Sister Nong's behalf." Ling Han suddenly came to a realization and said, "You're Nong Shui Yun's older sister, or younger sister?" "Older sister," Nong man said with a smile. "I invited young Master Han over, still wanting to discuss whether or not young Master Han could give up that bottle." "Hee, a mere bottle, was it necessary to invite me here to discuss it?" Ling Han said. "I'm afraid that I don't have a place to eat. Lady Man is so kind to me." Nong Man involuntarily froze. She wasn't concerned for Ling Han, and only thought of using such a gathering to pressure Ling Han. She'd never expected that Ling Han would actually intentionally distort it, making her not know how to justify herself in the moment. "Arrogant one, you dare take advantage of Fairy Nong." Many people instantly berated him. Each and every one was exceptional, and their powerful presences started circulating. Everyone shouting simultaneously formed a terrifying pressure. "You guys dare to be mean to Nyo's Ling Han?" Hu Nyo was instantly furious. "Beat them, beat the crap out of them." The rabbit only desired to wreak havoc, waving its small claws in instigation. "Pooh!" Many people immediately spurted out. This beast actually opened its mouth to talk, truly shocking. The scene was somewhat chaotic. Nong Man gesticulated for everyone to quiet down, and said, "Everyone keep calm. Brother Ling, I'm certainly very interested in that bottle, and if Brother Ling can sell it to me, Man will definitely not disappoint Brother Ling." "Oh." Ling Han intentionally sized up Nong Man with a smile, and said, "Is Nong family lacking a son-in-law?" Nong Man's expression instantly turned gloomy. This youngster was truly dreaming think of becoming Nong family's son-in-law? Impudence. Nong Shuiyun also squeezed through, then pointed angrily at Ling Han, and said, "Who are heck are you, a toad wishing to eat swan meat?" The people nearby laughed loudly. Nong Man was Nong family's beloved daughter, and Nong family's ancestor, Nong Bo Xian, was even a heaven-grade alchemist, being able to parallel shattering void tears. To marry Nong family's precious daughter, how outstanding would the man have to be? "Oh, Nong family's precious daughter is so noble that even Ling Han can't marry her?" A domineering voice could be heard as Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing arrived together. They were both spiritual infant tier experts, boasting great deterring power. The people in the surroundings instinctively made way. The people able to come here were obviously all geniuses, but there weren't many spiritual infant tier ones, and they couldn't possibly resist Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing's presence. 2 great spiritual infant tier experts stood by Ling Han's side with their arms crossed, posing a supportive stance. Spiritual infant tier. Amongst the younger generation nowadays, there temporarily wasn't a freak in the deity transformation tier, so spiritual infant tier elites were undoubtedly the strongest. Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing's battle was well known, and although they had just broken into the spiritual infant tier, their battle prowess was at least 7 to 8 stars, being able to fight elites 1 generation older. "Hee, Lady Man, if you marry my brother Ling, I'll give the snow dragon medal I just got as a celebratory gift." Mu Rongqing said with a smile, and with a swing of the arm, he tossed out a thoroughly white-colored medal. Its size was not much different from a fist, yet it made many people stare with wide eyes, revealing avaricious looks. Snow Dragon Medal. It was hard to confirm its level because its uses were extremely unique. It needed to be refined and mixed with other rare metals to greatly increase the durability of a forged weapon, allowing 7th tier ingredients to endure 8th tier martial intent. The upper limit was 7th tier. It was impossible to make an 8th tier ingredient into a 9th tier. Even so, everyone couldn't help but look at it with their covetous eyes. This chunk of snow dragon metal was fist-sized, and added to a 7th-tier rare metal, it was enough to refine an 8th-tier weapon that most people would be satisfied with. Even Nong Man's breathing stiffened, but she revealed an irritated expression. Could she, a dignified descendant of a heaven-grade alchemist, be bought with a single piece of snow dragon metal? No way. In your dreams, she rebuked, feeling like she'd suffered great humiliation. Ling Han sighed, then patted Mu Rongqing's shoulder, and said, Mu Rong, looks like you've got no game. I'd wanted to talk of a marriage, but she turned her nose up at your betrothal gift. What, me? Mu Rongqing pointed at his own nose. He revealed a shocked look, and then immediately shook his head, and said, I don't want to. Ling Han laughed, and said, then Lady Nong, sorry. My brother isn't interested in you, so pretend I didn't say those words earlier. Was it really good to play with people like this? Nong Man's almond-shaped eyes burst with fire, and Jing Shuang's expression wasn't any better. On the other side, Zhuo Lucheng also requested backup, running over in an aggressive manner and surrounding Ling Han and the others. You guys have overdone it. Think you can look down on people of the world with 2 spiritual infant-tier experts? Everyone looked coldly at Ling Han and the others. Amongst those invited this time, there were a few top geniuses who'd received direct entry to the Restore Heaven Academy. Once they arrived, suppressing Ling Han and the others would be as easy as the turn of a palm. Wang, a stream-like sound of an instrument suddenly sounded. It was as if a divine sound, and everyone's tempers suddenly subsided. Chapter 630, Wang Family's Pearl. Reverie _ Everyone looked towards the source of the sound, and saw that in the pavilion on the middle of the lake, a girl clad in white suddenly appeared. Her black hair was like clouds and snow, and she had a beauty without a shred of earthliness. She was playing a zither, gently fiddling with white hands like jade. Wonderful notes sounded, intoxicating people's mind and soul. This music shouldn't be of this world. The fishes in the lake constantly jumped out of the water and gathered around the pavilion in the lake, extremely lively. In the sky, large amounts of birds flew over and danced gracefully in the sky, as if fairies. The zither sounds turned into Tao symbols and entered the water, and caused slight ripples without any destructive power, making the fish joyful and the birds flutter. Everyone revealed an intoxicated look. This girl, and this music, should only exist in the heavens. How could it descend into the mortal realm? Fairy Yi Yun. What, she's Fairy Yi Yun? Truly devastatingly beautiful. She's actually not Middle State's #1 beauty? I don't believe it. I don't believe it either. Everyone shook their heads. Wang Yiyun's appearance was above the level of Lu Yutong, but fell short of Zhu Xian'er's. On top of it, the breathtaking scene obviously infinitely increased her charisma. Zhu Xian'er was somewhat jealous, and she moved close to Ling Han's ear. She said in a low voice, Xian'er also knows how to blow the flute. Ling Han looked at her small bright red lips, feeling his heart sway, and said, all right, let me hear it when there's time. Zhu Xian'er nodded, pleasingly affectionate. Everyone, please be amiable. Wang Yiyun pressed both hands gently on the zither, yet the lingering sound still reverberated. Her voice was also gentle and pleasant, airy like gentle splash of spring water. Yes. Everyone was persuaded, nodding in agreement. Ling Han was astounded. This girl was only 23 or 24, but had already crossed into the spiritual infant tier, extremely extraordinary. As expected of a great ancient sect's disciple, her tier far surpassed those of her peers. In the North region, definitely no one could compare with her. In the other 3 regions, only a few distinguished ones like Mu Rongqing would qualify to compare. This sect and the other great sects have a prophecy that soon, a great calamity will befall. Wang Yiyun continued to talk. The entire place was silent, and only her airy voice resonated. In the recent 10 millennia, the calamity that caused great destruction on the vast lands will come again, and this sect as well as the other great sects will do as 10 millennia before greet the powerful enemies hand in hand to bring peace and order to the world. However, to prepare for the worst, the establishment of the Restore Heaven Academy was still decided on to preserve the future hope as much as possible. So, everyone is the key to reinvigorating martial arts in the future, and must not harm our own. With that said, she stood up and tread on the lake, walking towards the shore. With the first step, fishes jumped out of the water playfully, and skylarks danced behind her. It was as if she was a celestial fairy who'd descended into the world, with beauty much calming and refined. Fairy is truly benevolent. The 5 great sects also cherish the world. If a great calamity were to truly happen, only the 5 great sects could defend the world. Great nobility and righteousness. Great virtuousness. Everyone all praised unanimously. No matter whether it was sincere or insincere, who dared to speak ill of the 5 great ancient sects. Those were super forces with shattering void tier elites, any of those sects could dominate the world. However, the 5 great sects constantly guarded their own land, and never planned to dominate the world. This made people stick their thumbs up in praise. Wang Yun arrived, and smiled sweetly towards Nong Man Man as she said, "Sister Man Man, don't stay angry, okay? For the sake of my younger sister, I obviously won't get angry." Nong Man Man barely squeezed out a smile. The great truth had already been said, and if she were to cling obstinately, she'd be looked down upon by others. So, to have a way with words was also a type of sharp weapon. Being criticized at the commanding height of morality, one could only sulk and lower one's head and say that one was convinced. "Brother Ling," Wang Yun turned her gaze over. "I've heard you and Sister Man Man got into a conflict because of a spirit tool. How about this? I have a 6th tier treasured tool to give Brother Ling in exchange for that spirit tool." Everyone revealed shocked expression. A 6th tier spirit tool was casually used as a gift, such boldness, and it showed Wang family's deep roots. Of course, if Nong Man Man weren't a descendant of a heaven-grade alchemist, she definitely wouldn't be so generous. Nong Man Man immediately revealed a joyful look. In reality, she discovered the extraordinariness of the refined celestial bottle, but didn't want to cause a commotion, so she had Nong Shuayun take action. In the end, Ling Han charged out midway and was richer and more imposing than they were, forcing her to invite Ling Han to the banquet and use the atmosphere here to force him to submit. With Wang family's beloved daughter speaking, and being able to receive a 6th tier spirit tool, Ling Han should agree no matter how one thought of it. After all, selling Wang Yun a favor could be of great use in the future. No need. "I like that bottle very much, and have no intention of selling it," Ling Han rejected immediately. No kidding, that stone bowl was Heaven Transformation Bowl's replica, which could refine all things and extract their essence, something more precious than the demon birth sword. Was it something a 6th tier spirit tool could be used to exchange for? In your dreams. He rejected so resolutely that he not only made everyone surprised, even Wang Yun found it unexpected. Her delicate face revealed an obvious astonished look, and being startled for a while, she finally said, "Brother Ling, are you not going to consider it a bit more?" "No need." Ling Han waved his hands, not giving her any face at all. "Ling Han, you're too arrogant." Zuoqiu Lucheng took the chance to shout out. Ling Han rejected Wang Yun's good intentions, obviously arousing the anger of the masses. Adding a bit more fire, he could obviously turn Ling Han into the target of all. Yes, too arrogant. Fairy Yun had good intentions, and you didn't even consider it at all. Humph, you really think yourself some big shot? If it weren't for the sake of Fairy Yun, I'd truly want to give him a beating. Everyone all spoke at once. A beauty had the natural advantage, and the more beautiful she was, the more it made people neglect the case itself, completely influenced by emotions, gravitating towards Wang Yun. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "Hunyo, full yet?" "Barely, not hungry." Hunyo popped out her head from the pile of food. "The things here aren't delicious at all. Nyo's gone through great trouble." Everyone seemed to faint. If it wasn't delicious, why would you eat so much? The plates stacked on the side were taller than you. Moreover, after eating so much, you were actually just barely not hungry. What sort of stomach did you have? Alright, let's go back and continue to eat. Ling Han said with a smile. Okay, okay. Hunyao clapped her hands while looking at Wang Yiyun, and said in a sweet voice, "You're such a failure of a host, making such nasty dishes for guests to eat." Sigh, Nyo looks down on you. Alright, eating so much of someone else's high-tier beast meat and still looking down on them, this little girl was truly one of a kind. Wang Yiyun didn't lose her temper at all, still full of smiles, as if nothing could sway her emotions, but the people on the side couldn't tolerate it. What kind of guests are you guys? Don't go, stay. Right, I want to spar with you a bit. That's right, fighting harms harmony, we'll just spar a little. Chapter 631, Well Conned. Reverie _ No one dared to challenge Mu Rongqing and Rain Emperor, because they were spiritual infant tier elites, but Ling Han was only in the flower blossom tier. Everyone was a genius of the current generation, who feared anyone else in a battle at the same tier. Geniuses were conceited, confident in being invincible at the same tier, so they were even more fearless. If one could force Ling Han to submit, then Wang Yiyun would definitely think highly of oneself, keeping oneself in mind. Persimmons obviously had to be picked and they were soft. Ling Han cracked a smile, and said, "You guys really want to spar with me?" Of course, those people shouted out one after another. "If you lose, then hand over the bottle." All right. Ling Han agreed directly. "However, you guys are betting against me with empty promises, so what benefits do I get if I win? Want to spar with me? Tine, take out treasures no lower than 6th tier. Who's scared of you?" Instantly, someone took out a treasure and placed it on the table. There were spirit medicine, rare metal, and some ancient articles, all looking to be of great age at first glance. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "All right, those who want to challenge me line up. I'll accept it all as long as you can offer a treasure. Lay the bet together, I only accept reservations now. Come, 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 those who want to challenge me, place the treasure on the table." Xian Er, you tally it. Yes. Zhu Xian Er nodded meekly. They issued a proper challenge. How did it become so trifling? Everyone was young and aggressive, and before a beauty, who was willing to admit defeat. Many people took out their treasures and threw it on the table. Zhu Xian Er was responsible for screening whether someone tried to get past her with a lower-level treasure. First things first, once the bet is laid, no refunds. You guys can only choose to fight me or not fight and lose automatically. There's no refunding the bet, Ling Han said seriously. He had everyone take out their treasures for the bet first to prevent others from cowering from the battle after witnessing his battle prowess. The youngsters all straightened up their necks and said, "Humph, you think we're afraid of you?" Ling Han looked at the tall pile of treasures stacked on the table. He revealed a smile, and said, "Anyone else, anyone else? It's the only opportunity, there'll be no more after this time. Those who want to ingratiate themselves with Wang family's lady, hurry up, a lost chance never returns." He actually advertised for himself? Wang Yiyun's expression was still unmoved, but she slightly clenched her 5 fingers, showing the fury that aroused within her at the moment. No more people came forward to lay a bet. As the others saw it, with this many people challenging one after another, Ling Han would definitely lose, and with one loss, there'd be no treasure bottle, so why would they need to challenge? Ling Han couldn't help but feel regretfully this many people could be tricked. He nodded, and said, "To save time, those who placed bets just now, you guys come together." Pooh. This guy was so arrogant. How many people were challenging Ling Han? At least 50. These 50 people weren't just anyone, but present geniuses, all of whom have crossed into the flower blossom tier, possessing tier-surpassing fighting abilities, varying from 3 to 4 stars to 5 to 6 stars. With these many geniuses teaming up, which flower blossom tier expert dared to be careless? Fighting one opponent after another would be tiring enough, let alone being ganged up on. Every genius wanted face, and obviously none of them were willing to attack. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "Since no one dares to attack, then I win. Xian Air, take the bets, let's retreat." "You can't go." Seeing Ling Han about to run, these youngsters were dissatisfied. Not that they didn't dare to attack, just that they didn't want to gang up on him. There'd be no glory in winning like that. Besides, who would take the credit? However, Ling Han was about to run, and they couldn't hold back anymore, jumping out one after another and surrounding Ling Han. "I'll take care of you guys in 3 moves, Ling Han said with a smile. Arrogance. The youngsters were all furious, flames bursting from their eyes. They felt that Ling Han was truly hateful, instantly making their tempers flare up. "In 3 moves, we defeat you is about right. Less nonsense. There's nothing much to say to such an arrogant person, so let's just beat him up." "All right." At least over 20 people attacked simultaneously. Hong, martial intent spread as origin power turned into all sorts of weapons, striking, slashing, and cutting at Ling Han, and all sorts of chi overflowed, making for a terrifyingly shocking sight. Ling Han smiled faintly. Powerful origin power gathered, and lightning flickered over his body. Then, he simply fired a casual punch. Pang, 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 pang. All the origin power weapons shattered at once, and all the chi attacks were annihilated. However, the lightning wasn't extinguished, it spread towards those people with supreme speed. Instantly, one figure after another was shocked into the sky, and then descended like scattering flowers, and pa, fell all over the ground. 20 people were actually defeated in 1 move. 2 more moves, Ling Han muttered, and said to the remaining 20+ people, "You guys have to attack all at once, or else, with 2 remaining moves, I really can't take care of all of you." In the surround, it was a field of silence. This youngster was so powerful. Although no one amongst the 20+ people received qualification for direct entry to the Restore Heaven Academy, among those being able to attend the banquet, who wasn't an outstanding talent. However, over 20 people attacking together were utterly defeated with 1 move. Just how strong was Ling Han? Unless there was suppression of a large tier, those possessing such battle prowess were definitely the biggest geniuses to enter the Restore Heaven Academy. The remaining 20+ people looked at each other, not daring to attack. Their battle prowess wasn't much stronger than that of those lying on the ground, so even if they could stand 1 move, what difference would it be if they were defeated in 2 moves or 3 moves? Suffering an utter defeat under watchful eyes, wasn't that just foolish? Fight my A**s. No wonder Ling Han wanted them to take out their treasures for the bet first. Certainly, after seeing his battle prowess, who would be stupid enough to make a bet? Such a freak, only the biggest geniuses with direct entry to the Restore Heaven Academy could rival him. Zhu Xian was full of smiles, collecting all the treasures on the table. Other than plundering, tricking people also seems to be a shortcut to making lots of money. Ling Han muttered to himself. He then laughed, raising his voice to say, "Who else wants to challenge me?" Everyone was speechless, placing their gazes at the finest geniuses that possessed the qualification for direct entry to the academy. Wang Yun's beautiful eyes lit up, and she said, "With Brother Ling's great might, you should receive the qualification for direct entry to the Restore Heaven Academy." Ling Han laughed, and said, "Isn't this normal? Brother Mu Rongqing also didn't qualify either, right?" Mu Rongqing pointed at his own nose, and said sourly, "Why take me for a comparison again?" "Just comparing. I didn't ask for your opinion, so please don't interrupt," Ling Han said with a smile, and then said to Wang Yun, "Lady Wang, can we leave?" "Brother Ling, this time," Yun invited everyone over to discuss a matter, "so please sit for a moment," Wang Yun spoke to retain them. "The food's so nasty, can't sit anymore." Hunyo struck the table, face full of discontent. Hearing this, everyone lamented for Wang Yun. The Wang family definitely spent a great deal to set up this banquet, but in Hu Nyo's mouth, it became neglecting guests, truly an injustice. Chapter 632, Striking Heaven Alliance. Reverie _ Wang Yiyun didn't pay attention to Hu Nyo. Although this little girl was also extremely freakish, she was still young. The emphasis was on Ling Han. Ling Han pondered, and said, "All right, then let's see what you have to discuss." Wang Yiyun smiled lightly, which was like a gentle breeze in a warm sun, as if nothing could move her spirit. She said, "Inviting everyone over this time was mainly for a proposal. Everyone is a present-age genius, and when the Restore Heaven Academy opens, many people will be able to enter." She paused, and went on, "However, where there are people, there are sections of society circles. The 5 great sects have a circle for the 5 great sects, the East region and North region have their own circles. If anyone is alone or in a weak force, they'll definitely be mistreated at that time." Everyone nodded their heads involuntarily. In their own sects and families, they were undoubtedly excellent, the best geniuses, but in the Restore Heaven Academy, the geniuses from all over the vast lands would be gathered. They would obviously become the normal level there, and not even be able to enter the Restore Heaven Academy. Ling Han was also at the Flower Blossom tier, but his battle prowess was extremely terrifying, making people's hair stand on ends. Those who offended him now, wouldn't they be afraid of being bullied by him when they entered the academy? One had to know that families, and the forces of a sect, couldn't be brought into the academy. "So, Yiyun has a proposal. We'll form a union and look after each other, resisting people from other circles together," Wang Yiyun went on. This was the true purpose of her hosting a banquet gathering geniuses for her own use. Despite the fact that ones here were a younger generation, they would definitely become the leaders of various families and sections. If these people were brought under her control, it would be an unneglectable force in the future. Ling Han couldn't help but be curious, and asked, "This alliance, who will be the alliance's leader?" Wang Yiyun glanced at Ling Han again, and then said, "My senior brother Lang Yitian is obviously the best choice for the alliance's leader." Lang Yitian, an exceptional figure amongst the younger generations in Middle State, standing side by side with Yao Hui Yue and Small Saber King. His strength was unfathomable, being able to strike down geniuses of an older generation. He was unpredictably strong. Everyone was convinced. With Lang Yitian's guidance, they certainly wouldn't need to fear anyone else. Ling Han smiled. He raised his hand, and said, "I want to be this alliance's leader, yes or no?" Wang Yiyun was still full of smiles, and said, "Since we're forming an alliance, everything is obviously based on strength. If Brother Ling feels that his strength is above that of my senior brother, you may challenge my senior brother. Whoever is more able will take the place." "All right, call Lang Yitian over, and let me have a proper go," Ling Han said with a smile. Wang Yiyun's index finger moved slightly, having the urge to kill someone. Why did this guy always argue against her? She said, "My senior brother is cultivating in seclusion. He can cross into the deity transformation tier at any time, and cannot spare time." "What, the deity transformation tier? My god. Lang Yitian shouldn't be over 40, right? At most 40. A deity transformation tier at 40 years old, truly frightening." Everyone cried out one after another. They were all hovering around the Flower Blossom tier, but the strongest genius of the current age was already starting to break through to the deity transformation tier. This gap was unbelievably large. However, if they all decided to join the alliance, then the strength of the alliance's leader was obviously the better the stronger it was. Wang Yiyun looked again at Ling Han, and said, "If Brother Ling is still unsatisfied, Yiyun can fight instead of senior brother. However, Yiyun's cultivation is low, and her talent doesn't even reach senior brother's 0.1%, at most having 1% of senior brother's strength." She first deprecated herself, then elevated Lang Yitian to extreme heights. If Ling Han had to spend great efforts to defeat her, or even be inferior to her, how would he qualify to challenge Lang Yitian? This girl was remarkable. Ling Han smiled lightly, and said, Lang Yatian having such a close friend and a better half like you is rather a fortunate thing." Hearing such words, countless youngsters instantly burst into anger. In their hearts, Wang Yiyun was a goddess, a celestial, and celestials were obviously pure and untinged by mortal matters. If she fell into the mortal realm, then would she still be a fairy? Killing intent flashed across Wang Yiyun's eyes. She admired Lang Yatian, and was willing to sacrifice herself for him, so she had to maintain her superior fairy identity. This way, she could win over more people, but Ling Han was clearly undermining her. She finally couldn't hold back and said, "Brother Ling, since you're not convinced with my senior brother, then allow Yi Yun to fight in lieu of senior brother." Wait. At this moment, a figure suddenly arrived in a dash. It was lofty, with divine golden light revolving around the entire body, just like a deity. Ling Han revealed an astounded look. It was Shenyuan Ziguang. "So it's brother Shenyuan." Wang Yiyun instantly revealed a smile, and introduced him to everyone. Shenyuan Ziguang, a current genius, which everyone should be no stranger to. Brother Shenyuan already agreed to joining our Striking Heaven Alliance as one of the 5 deputy leaders. Shenyuan Ziguang, long renowned. Even Shenyuan Ziguang joined for the place of deputy leader. This Striking Heaven Alliance is powerful as expected. I want to join. Don't anyone stop me. Shenyuan Ziguang simply stared at Ling Han and said, "Where's Lady Helian?" Ling Han stroked his chin. How did this guy recognize him? However, thinking again, Hunyao was an obvious symbol. Could there be a second little girl that could eat so much and fight so well? He snorted and said, "Defeated rival, none of your damn business." Vanquished opponent? Everyone gasped in astonishment. Shenyuan Ziguang actually fought him hand to hand, and was outmatched? Shenyuan Ziguang's gaze grew threatening as he said, "If you don't tell me Lady Helian's whereabouts, I'll kill you today." Your intelligence is truly lacking. A defeated rival still dares to behave courageously? Ling Han shook his head. Shenyuan Ziguang took large strides towards Ling Han, and with each step, the heavens moved and the earth shook as if the stars in the skies couldn't bear his presence and were about to fall. He extended his finger and pointed at Ling Han. "After the last exchange, how much do you think I improved?" Pooh! As he extended his finger, a saber ray formed, thin as gossamer, yet filled with danger. Saber ray. Ling Han immediately felt an intense warning premonition. This wasn't a pseudo-ray, but a genuine saber ray. Could Shenyuan Ziguang have cultivated 30 flashes of qi? For such a genius, he definitely wouldn't pursue transient power and neglect the future, so since he'd condensed it into a ray, then he'd definitely cultivated 30 flashes of qi. Was he the first amongst the younger generation to cultivate 30 flashes of qi and form a ray? One as powerful as Small Saber King still remained at 29 flashes of qi. This Shenyuan Ziguang was truly remarkable. Ling Han didn't believe that he could progress so fast on his own, whether it be Small Saber King or Yao Hui Yue. Their talent was definitely no inferior to Shenyuan Ziguang's, and possibly even surpassed his. Why could they not complete the breakthrough, and only Shenyuan Ziguang could? It was probably this guy's bloodline, which enabled him to forcibly increase battle prowess by several stars, and even derive all sorts of shadows of divine beasts. Chapter 633, Self-Exploding Spirit Tools. Faced with an authentic saber ray, what more when it was a saber ray that was formed from a total of 30 flashes of qi, not even Ling Han dared to take it head-on. Ray was something surpassing qi, an absolute domination, and the cutting edge that was unbelievably sharp, able to slice apart all in its path. Even if Ling Han had managed to form the body of iron sheet, he dared not try to take this strike head-on. After all, this battle was not a mere spar, but could possibly develop into a full-blown duel to the death. He smiled calmly and said, "You have improved, so how could it be that I have not?" A flash of lightning flickered over his body, and he instantly disappeared from where he had originally been standing at a speed so fast that his movements could not be seen with the naked eye. An expression of surprise appeared on Shenyuan Ziguang's face, What kind of movement technique was that? How could it be so fast? Before he had made a move, he had already calculated Ling Han's battle prowess in advance, and he believed that after he had combined his chi into Ray, he could force Ling Han into a retreat in defeat. Ling Han should not even have the strength to parry his attacks. But he had never thought that after a mere few months, Ling Han's movement technique would actually have improved to a whole different level. Indeed, he was not the only one who had improved. It's more than enough to kill you. Xianyuan Ziguang sneered. He drew his saber and slashed forth. This time, the saber ray shone brilliantly, and was as long as 300 meters. It transformed into something that resembled a waterfall, and swept towards Ling Han. Is that so? Ling Han turned into a flash of lightning, and as he used the demon fairy steps, he was as slippery as a fish, moving as nimbly as he liked. Moving his left arm into the form of a bow, his right hand pulled on empty air, and Wang, instantly, an arrow formed of origin power appeared. It was completely white, but exuded a frightening cold air. Exterminating Dragon Star Arrow. Go! With a light humph, the arrow of origin power shot out. Xiao, in a flash, it had arrived in front of Xianyuan Ziguang's chest. One shouldn't underestimate this single arrow, as it had the combined force of 3 different mystical powers. The Eye of Truth saw through to the weakest point in Xianyuan Ziguang's defenses. It was followed by the activation of the exterminating Dragon Star Arrow, which was then sped up with the power of lightning, increasing the speed of this arrow to its maximum, which, at the same time, was shot towards the point that Xianyuan Ziguang would find the most difficult to defend. Xianyuan Ziguang paled drastically, and at the first possible moment, activated his bloodline inheritance. Endless flames surged out from within his body, and in an instant, he had surpassed the level of the flower blossom tier, and stepped onto the plane of the spiritual infant tier. Ancient divine beasts such as true dragons and true phoenixes roared around him. He looked like a son of heaven that had descended onto the mortal plane, with the air of a supreme ruler. Pooh! The arrow hit its target, yet did not pierce through Xianyuan Ziguang's chest. There wasn't even a sign of blood, it merely tore through the part of the clothing that covered his chest, and revealed a navy blue armor. It was currently shining brightly, and had forcefully disintegrated the arrow of origin power. Ha ha ha, destiny rides on my shoulders, and I can even pick up treasures while walking on the road. Since I am destined, how could I possibly be defeated in your hand? Xianyuan Ziguang declared, laughing wildly. With a wave of his right hand, 36 treasured sabers of various shapes and sizes flew out, and surrounded Ling Han. Heaven Star Annihilating Saber Array, he shouted. Here it is again. Every time you throw a move, you must announce its name. Don't you get annoyed? Ling Han mocked, though he did not dare to show the least bit of carelessness in his expression. This saber array was considerably terrifying, and possessed the ability to pose a threat to him. Tell me the location of Helian Sun Shui, or I will definitely kill you. Xianyuan Ziguang took control of the saber array without immediately releasing its might, and merely looked coldly upon Ling Han. You're crazy. Ling Han refused in disdain. He drew his long sword, and the desolate hell sword displayed its awesome power, standing steadfast against the terrifying saber intent. Hang, so you are planning to ask for trouble? Xianyuan Ziguang declared coldly, and manipulated the saber array to charge at Ling Han. Ling Han brandished his sword to parry the oncoming attack, but Xianyuan Ziguang was really very strong. Under the attack of saber ray, ferocious light was all that was left within the saber array, and every streak of light could become a mortal threat to any flower blossom tier cultivator. No, even spiritual infant tier cultivators would be shaken. That was saber ray, after all, and the destructive power it possessed was really too terrifying. Qi and Ray were on 2 completely different levels, just like how there was a large difference of power between flower blossom and spiritual infant tiers. Ling Han was having a really tough time staying on the defense. Thankfully, not only was he nimble, his defenses were also very shockingly powerful. Firstly, he had origin power, which he could form into a defense. Additionally, he also had a physique on the level of Tier 6 treasure metal, and even if these two layers were penetrated, he still had the indestructible heaven scroll circulating inside his body, which would allow him to instantly heal majority of his injuries. Worst come to worst, he still had 6 drops of indestructible true fluid, which was more than enough to revive him quite a number of times. The saber ray ripped forth, and Ling Han cut a very sorry figure. These 36 sabers should belong to a whole set, and belonged to some great cultivator from the ancient times, yet had, for some reason, fallen into Xianyuan Ziguang's hands. Just like this guy had said, he could easily pick up treasures by merely going outside, so he was born with great luck. Fuck, do you think you're the only one with treasures? Ling Han humphed, and said, just some pieces of scrap metal, just see as I take them all in. Just continue to brag. Xianyuan Ziguang sneered coldly. Tell me the location of Helian Sun Shui. He could really be considered a romantic. It was apparent that Helian Sun Shui had not paid him much attention, but he still was deeply in love with her. Ling Han flipped his right hand, and drew out the heaven transformation bowl. Take them. He activated the treasured item, and instantly, multiple interwoven patterns appeared. Wang, the stone bowl instantly rose into the air, and shone with endless light. Xiao, xiao, xiao. Immediately, 3 treasured sabers were taken in. What? Everyone was struck completely dumb. They could all plainly see the might of the saber array, yet this stone bowl that Ling Han had drawn out could actually destroy the saber array and take in the treasured sabers. It was really an unbelievable sight. Xianyuan Ziguang was even more dumbfounded. He was very clear about the power that these 36 treasured sabers had. After they were taken in by that stone bowl, he had completely lost all contact with them, as if they had completely disappeared from this plane of existence. Xiao, xiao, xiao. A stone bowl did not have any kind of emotions, it merely continued to take in the treasured sabers, and in the time for a few breaths, it had taken in another 7 sabers. This is, Nong Man's beautiful eyes shone. She recognized that this was the bottom of that refined celestial bottle, which was something that she had her eye on. She had never thought that it was actually a stone bowl, and would actually possess such powerful might. Her desire to obtain it increased. Wang Yun's eyes narrowed as well. She imagined that if her senior brother Lang could obtain this treasure, he would be like a tiger that had grown wings. Even the little saber king, Yao Hui Yue, or Dong Ling heir would easily be swept aside by senior brother disciple Lang's might. However, how would she be able to obtain this treasure? Ling Han would bend to neither force nor persuasion, and was not that easily handled. Xianyuan Ziguang hardened his heart, and shouted, explode. Wang, the remaining 26 treasured sabers shone with a sharp light at the same time, and the patterns on their blades spread out as if they were cobwebs before instantly vanishing. The spirit tool would self-explode. Ling Han was astonished what kind of spirit tool was capable of exploding by itself. Only those spirit tools that had formed their own tool spirits, but since they had formed their own tool spirits, the latter would be similar to ordinary living creatures, wherein life was their most important priority. Unless in desperate straits, they would definitely not self-explode. For example, the Black Tower. If Ling Han actually wanted Small Tower to explode itself, just see if Small Tower would actually pay him any attention. But with the command of Xianyuan Ziguang, these spirit tools all chose to explode at the same time, as if he was the ruler of the spirit tools. Now that his command was announced, they were unable to refuse. Fuck, these spirit tools were level 7 treasures, and were unable to express their full might in Xianyuan Ziguang's hands, but the moment they exploded themselves, just imagine, if 26 high-level spiritual infant tier cultivators chose to use their full might, and unleash a move that would kill themselves along with their enemies, how terrifying would the power of this blow be? Without another word, Ling Han rode on lightning and tried his best to break out of the siege. Chapter 634, Music of the Qin. Pung. 26 treasured sabers exploded at the same time, and instantly became a blinding light in the skies. The terrifying power of the explosion descended, and peng, 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 this side courtyard of the Wang clan was instantly reduced to rubble. So what if they were in the flower blossom tier? Faced with the shock wave, they were all spitting up mouthfuls of blood, and spiritual pedestal tier cultivators were even worse off. In the best case scenario, some were completely covered with blood, whereas those who came off worse had their bones broken and ligaments torn. Being equivalent to 26 high-level spiritual infant tier elite cultivators sacrificing their lives in a full-out attack, the power of this strike was naturally very terrifying. Zhu Xian'er was still alright as she had 3 spiritual infant tier cultivators, who were more than enough to nullify all the power of this shock wave, by her side. Hu Niu was even more special. With a wave of her tiny hands, she had sliced apart the shock wave, which split into 2 halves which passed on either side of her, and did not manage to hurt a single hair on her head. Very far away, Ling Han appeared. His face was pale, and he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. However, a pleased expression appeared on his face. The Heaven Transformation Bowl had taken in 10 treasured sabers, and by this time, had completely refined all of them, and they had now become a pool of liquid metal. He poured the liquid out, and it rapidly solidified to become a block of metal. He weighed it in his hand. It was about 50 kilograms in weight. However, compared with the total weight of the 10 treasured sabers, it had at least been lightened by 100 times. This was the use of the Heaven Transformation Bowl purification. They had been level 7 treasured sabers previously, and now that they had been purified, they should reach level 8. However, as this block of metal had become a mixture of various metals, not even Ling Han was sure what he should call this metal anymore. Never mind, it was still a level 8 precious metal in any case, so he would be able to forge a considerable number of arrows from it again. He circulated the indestructible heaven scroll, and the injuries on his body were immediately erased. He smiled faintly, and said, "Wealth-delivering boy, do you have any other treasures to gift to your grandfather?" Xianyuan Ziguang was thrown into a flying rage. How could he have wanted to gift treasures to Ling Han? He had just not thought that Ling Han would have been able to draw out a strange stone bowl, which was able to easily break through his saber array. He had made the sabers self-destruct purely because he would rather destroy them rather than gift them to Ling Han. But even in doing so, he was not able to inflict a serious wound on Ling Han, which caused him to feel strong dejection. Ling Han decided not to kill off Xianyuan Ziguang. This man had luck in defiance of the natural order. Merely going outdoors, there would be treasures crashing down right in front of him. Thus, Ling Han would just let treasures continue crashing down on him so that he'd be able to once again loot him. This was akin to planting garlic chives. If he pulled out even the roots, he would only be able to harvest once. However, if he left the roots behind, he'd be able to harvest again and again. If only Xianyuan Ziguang knew of Ling Han's thoughts. It was a wonder how he would feel then. Wang Yiyun looked at the whole area of destruction, and though a slight smile was still on her beautiful face, there was an additional flash of killing intent in her eyes. A grand, proper banquet was ruined just like that by Ling Han and Xianyuan Ziguang. However, Xianyuan Ziguang was one of her own, so if she wanted anyone to hate, she could only hate Ling Han. "Brother Ling, I've already said as such just now. If you will not recognize my senior brother disciple as the alliance leader, then Yiyun shall battle you in place of my senior brother disciple." With a wave of her silky sleeve, her manner was refined and elegant, just as if she was a deity. Ling Han glanced at her, then smiled, and said, "Do you, too, plan to make a gamble with me?" "That stone bowl." Wang Yiyun pointed with a slender finger. "If I win, you will give that stone bowl to me." Ling Han pondered for a moment, then said, "All right, then if you lose, you must accept my brother's marriage proposal." He pointed at Mu Rongqing. "Pay, I don't want to marry this ugly girl." Mu Rongqing jumped up in anger. "Don't keep putting me on the spot." Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, There's nothing to be done. My brother does not like you, so just offer some kind of precious metal or spirit herb as a stake." "How dare you?" quite a number of young men shouted in rage. Ling Han actually dared to desecrate their goddess. Wang Yiyun, on the other hand, was extremely calm, and casually tossed out a spirit herb, and said, "This is Danyang Phoenix Cry Grass. Amongst 7th-tier spirit herbs, it can still be considered something of high quality. Would this be enough?" "Just passable." Ling Han nodded. Putting aside level 7 spirit herbs, not even 10th-tier divine herbs could compare to the Heaven Transformation Bowl, but he had full confidence he would win, so it would be fine even if he would earn less from this wager. Wang Yun continued, "However, since that stone bowl is your stake, I would like Brother Ling to put it to a side. Yun is worried that if Brother Ling loses, you would not admit your defeat." This woman was very shrewd. For Ling Han, the stone bowl was a very powerful spirit tool. In the face of Xianyuan Ziguang's terrifyingly powerful saber array, he could still shatter it, but now, with a mere few words from Wang Yun, this item could not be used. She indeed had an artful thought, as well as meticulous thoughts. Ling Han laughed loudly, and casually tossed the stone bowl to one side. Then, he said, "You are very smart, but be careful, do not go for wool and come home shorn." Wang Yun smiled slightly, and with a wave of her hands, a chain appeared in front of her. It looked to be extremely ancient, and there was a great number of armored warriors engraved on it. They were currently shown to be fighting a bloody battle, which was slightly misfitting. She sat in mid-air, her figure slowly rising, and said, "Please listen to a song from me, Brother Ling." Wang. With a move of her hands, the sound of the chain immediately surged out in waves. It was gentle and melodious as if the sound of nature. Everyone looked captivated and dazzled. Wang Yun possessed outstanding beauty, and coupled with her extraordinary skills with the chain, she indeed had the charm to enchant countless people. The sound of the chain spread out, and slight confusion appeared in Ling Han's eyes. She wanted to disturb his heart? A cold smirk immediately appeared on Ling Han's face. She was really too naive. He was one who possessed a sliver of divine sense of heaven tier, and she, a mere spiritual infant tier cultivator, wanted to enchant him? Chang. The sound of the chain suddenly changed from its previous gentle, beautiful state to a harsh tone as if there was an ambush around every corner, and war was on the verge of breaking out. Wang, Wang, Wang. Those fully armored warriors on the body of the chain shone respectively, and as the music of the chain rose and fell, they actually walked out, and stood one by one in midair. There was a total of 81, and each one of them had the might of a high-level spiritual infant tier cultivator. This chain was actually a spirit tool as well, and could summon 81 spiritual infant tier elite cultivators. What a shock. No wonder Wang Yun devised a scheme for Ling Han to set the Heaven Transformation Bowl to a side. She feared that her treasured chain would be suppressed by the Heaven Transformation Bow. Now, with the appearance of 81 high-level spiritual infant tier cultivators, how was he supposed to block them? One had to know that they were mere summons of a spirit tool, so they held no fear of death or injury, and could be claimed to be similar to the likes of corpse soldiers as they were the most loyal of deadly soldiers. These warriors were attired in extremely sturdy full armor, and wielded various weapons in their hands. Multiple patterns shone, and without the slightest hesitation, they charged towards Ling Han in attack. Everyone felt as if they were about to suffocate. Previously, there were only 36 treasured sabers, but now, there were 81 spiritual infant tier warriors, which was even more impossible to stand against. Ling Han, on the other hand, was not afraid. Xianyuan Ziguang, in a single breath, drew out a total of 36 level 7 spirit tools, and these 81 spiritual infant tier warriors in front of him now were merely birthed by a single treasure, so their might could not be compared to the former. He drew the demon birth sword directly. Wasn't it just a competition of spirit tools? Who would cower? Wang, the patterns on the demon birth sword lit up. 1, 2, 3. There was one more. Don't look down on it for simply having one additional pattern lit up. This was a level 10 spirit tool, so how could just having one additional pattern light up grant too little power? Immediately, an endless aura of might spread out. Ling Han stood with a sword in hand as if he was a great demon king, exuding an extremely terrifying aura, which completely suppressed all 81 spiritual infant tier warriors. Chapter 635, Repeated Appearance of Ultimate Techniques. Everyone was struck with disbelief. 81 spiritual infant tier soldiers should have the might to overturn rivers and empty oceans, but Ling Han had merely drawn out a treasured sword, and it was enough to make the figures of those soldiers quiver as if they were on the verge of being destroyed. This was suppression of a whole different level. Level 8, or perhaps even a level 9 spirit tool, someone exclaimed in a shaking voice. Spirit tools were not common ordinary weapons, but treasured tools that, on the foundation of being forged from level 7 precious metals, followed by the cultivation by one's martial intent, possessed supreme power. The power of these spirit tools was very terrifying, and even when wielded by flower blossom tier cultivators, they were capable of possessing the might of the spiritual infant tier. For example, that Qin of Wang Yun definitely had to be a 7th tier spirit tool to be capable of releasing 81 spiritual infant tier warriors. Although they were not physically real, their might was not inferior to the real thing, and they had no fear of death or injury. And the higher the level of the spirit tool, the more difficult it was to complete it. That was because there were so many powerful people in this world, and cultivating a spirit tool would at least be a matter of a few dozen years, and as time passed, the martial intent inside could possibly be erased as well. That was unless the spirit tool managed to form its own tool spirit that would allow it to automatically take in energy from the surroundings, and ensure that the martial intent inside would not be worn down, but rather be destroyed only with the destruction of the spirit tool itself. Thus, when the two of them showed off their high-level spirit tools, this was a great shock to the masses. This was a power display for a party. Otherwise, even if you possessed a level 7 or level 8 precious metal, so what? You would only be able to forge a weapon of this level, but it would not possess the power of a spirit tool. An apparent change in expression finally appeared on Wang Yun's face. The demon birth sword put on her a huge pressure, causing her to no longer feel as confident as she had been at the beginning. How could the spiritual infant tier lose to the flower blossom tier? She felt very vexed. When geniuses reached the peak of the flower blossom tier, they were indeed capable of defeating some low-level or even mid-level spiritual infant tier cultivators, and she indeed was only in the second layer of spiritual infant tier, but her battle prowess had reached 10 stars, and no matter how she looked at it, she was at an absolute advantage in this battle. She definitely couldn't allow herself to be scared off by her opponent. Her playing of the Qin became even faster, and the notes transformed into a powerful army. The 81 spiritual infant tier soldiers instantly regained their divine might as if fresh blood had been pumped into them, and they charged towards Ling Han. Ling Han, meanwhile, smiled calmly. Followed by the increase of his comprehension level in the sword arts, he had finally unlocked another pattern on the demon birth sword, and had increased the power of this level 10 spirit tool by another level. What kind of concept was a level 10 spirit tool? With the full release of its power, it was equivalent to the might of a shattering void tier ultimate elite. He waved his sword, and hung, 29 flashes of sword chi combined to form a pseudo-ray. With a pu, it slashed at a spiritual infant tier soldier. That soldier hurriedly used his battle spear to parry, but this pseudo-ray had been struck by a level 10 spirit tool, so the destructive power behind this strike was even more terrifying than a real ray. That soldier, along with his weapon, was immediately slashed in half by this strike. One strike, and it was enough to kill off a spiritual infant tier soldier. Hiss! Everyone inhaled sharply. Their only thought was that Ling Han was strong to a spine-chilling extent. If Ling Han had been a nature-defying monster like Yao Hui Yue or the Little Saber King, then they would still have been able to accept it. After all, these guys had all broken through to the spiritual infant tier, and with their battle prowess, they were naturally capable of sweeping aside all opponents in the same cultivation level as them. The problem was that Ling Han was only in the flower blossom tier. Ling Han continued to endlessly brandish his sword, and one wave meant one opponent would be downed. He was definitely capable of standing strong and continuously brandishing his sword 81 times, and those 81 soldiers were completely slashed apart. Logically speaking, they did not have physical bodies, so naturally should have no vital points, and should be able to reform even after being sliced in half, and continue battling. But the sword ray unleashed with the demon birth sword naturally contained the might of a level 10 spirit tool, so how could they possibly piece themselves back together? Naturally, their only fate was to be erased. Wah! Wang Yun spat out a mouthful of blood, her beautiful eyes filled with shock. She had long since refined this treasured qin, so her heart and spirit were joined with it. Now that the 81 soldiers had been sliced in half and destroyed, she was also harmed. She felt as if her heart was on fire, feeling incredibly awful. She was defiant, and with a light pat on her treasured qin, Wang, a sharp sword actually shot out from inside the qin. This sword was extremely thin, and the blade was like a string on the qin. If one did not look closely, one would not be able to see it at all. Wang Yun struck out with her sword, and the blade that seemed akin to a string from the qin actually turned into a silk thread that charged to entwine Ling Han. Furthermore, it seemed endless, like the blood-sucking origin gold, it could be endlessly lengthened. But this sword had not been forged from the blood-sucking origin gold, thus the sword qi and origin power she shot out had combined in an amazing way, and headed to entwine Ling Han as if she had spread out a large net over him. This is the Wang clan's ultimate art, falling shadow twining silk sword technique. Years ago, this was the ultimate art the ancestor of the Wang clan used to move unhindered in the world. I'd never imagined that Wang Yun would have already learned it. She really deserves the title of genius. Fairy Wang, cut this brat in half. Everyone was exclaiming in shock, and a greater number of people was cheering Wang Yun on. They naturally hoped that this fairy would be able to emerge victorious. Interesting, Ling Han murmured, and with a shake of his right hand, fierce sword qi swept out of the demon birth sword, which easily sliced apart the sword threads around him. As long as the power gap was not too big, a level 10 spirit tool naturally possessed an overwhelming advantage. Wang Yun soared up, her white robes floating around her as if she was the fairy of the moon who was dancing gracefully. However, every slash of her sword gave rise to a fierce flash of sword qi, soaring in various arcs towards Ling Han, which made for a bizarre sight. Ling Han used the thunderclap 9th heaven, and his battle prowess spiked greatly, reaching 15 stars of the spiritual infant tier. He charged towards Wang Yun. Ding, 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 ding. The two swords clashed against one another endlessly, a terrifying light blooming as a result. Even flower blossom tier cultivators dared not stare continuously at the sight, fearing that their eyes would be blinded as a consequence. Wang Yun paled in shock. With every exchange, her body would feel numb as if she had been electrocuted. The feeling was so awful that she almost felt on the verge of spitting up blood. Even her origin power was routed, and she was unable to release her full power. In a head-on confrontation, she was actually inferior to a flower blossom tier cultivator. One could only say that the thunderclap 9th heaven was really too forceful, so strong that it was capable of seriously subduing even a super genius the likes of Wang Yun. Ling Han dominated Wang Yun in battle, and in a mere few dozen moves, her sword was sent flying from her hands. Wang Yun gritted her teeth, and pulling out a hair clip, threw it into the air. Instantly, a crystal-clear light shone from it, which rapidly enlarged until it was about 10 feet long, appearing like a very strange-looking boat. Ling Han frowned, and said, "If you continue to pester me, I'll spank your behind." Wang Yun was embarrassed and infuriated, so how was it possible that she would listen? She continued to control the hair clip, and origin power focused at its tip. It became a ball of light that exuded a terrifying aura as if it was capable of destroying the earth and heavens. Disobedient. The light of thunder flickered on Ling Han's body. He was as of yet unable to transform into lightning, but his speed had spiked up by a whole 3 times, and in a flash, he had appeared above Wang Yun. The demon birth sword swept down, and struck directly on Wang Yun's star. "Ah!" Wang Yun shouted in shock, firstly, due to the pain, and secondly, due to shame. This man actually really dared to spank her behind. However, she was still a prodigy of this generation. Even in such a situation, she still continued to control the hair clip to shoot out an attack towards Ling Han. Xiao, a flash of light shot out with incredible destructive power behind it. Ling Han slashed out with his full power, completely destroying this flash of light, yet felt a numbing in his right hand, so much that he almost could not raise it back up again. He could not help but be surprised. One had to know that his physique was of an extremely shocking level, but after facing such a strike, he would actually feel so bad. This hair clip was really extraordinary. Pa, pa, pa. He repeatedly spanked Wang Yun's star. Chapter 636, Zhu Xian Air Breaks Through. Everyone was dumbstruck. That was Wang Yun, a publicly acknowledged fairy. Moreover, she was also the treasured daughter of the Wang clan, as well as an outstanding disciple of the Blue Thunder sect, and now, she actually had her behind spanked by a man? This. So envious, they very much wanted to spank her once too, but they wouldn't be using a sword, but rather their bare hand to truly feel the plumpness and bounciness of that star. A considerable number even began cursing Ling Han secretly. He did not take more advantage even when gifted with such a great opportunity. Was he stupid? Since he had already formed an enmity with the Wang clan, what was the point of acting reserved? Who knew, if it was too late to change anything, Fairy Wang would fall wholeheartedly for him. But even more people bristled with fury. This brat actually dared to commit a blasphemy against the goddess of their hearts. She truly deserved to die 100 times. Wang Yun could not help but exclaim in shock as well. To have her behind spanked publicly like this was an experience she had never had before. She felt ashamed and enraged to death. But what made her feel helpless was that she was completely no match for Ling Han, and could only allow the latter to torment her backside. She released an embarrassed cry, but finally made no further attempts to continue fighting back. With a flash of her figure, she had returned to the ground. Her expression had regained its previous serenity, and she had once again become the otherworldly fairy that she had been before. You admit your defeat? Ling Han asked, smiling. Wang Yun's eyes spat fire, wanting nothing more than to tear Ling Han into 1,000,000 pieces, but what could she do since she was no match for him? Though there were a few spiritual infant-tier cultivators present, their prowess was more or less on the same level as hers. Since she was no match for Ling Han, she believed that no one else would be able to suppress this young man. She forced down her fury as she still had to maintain her calm, fairy-like demeanor, and said, Yi Yun is not skilled enough. Thus, I admit my loss. Ling Han grabbed her gambling stake, smiling calmly, and asked, Now, is there anyone else who would like to stop me from leaving? No one spoke. Ling Han was really too strong. He should be in existence on the level of monsters, and only the likes of Yao Hui Yue and the Little Saber King, the strongest prodigies of their generation, would be able to subdue him. Even if anyone else wanted to step up to the challenge, they would only be seeking a thrashing. Let's go. We'll change locations, and drink to our heart's content. Ling Han said to the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing. All right. Both of them nodded. They left in a grand display, making many eyes spit fire at them. They ate, thrashed, played, and now decided to leave just like that, leaving behind shambles and a mess in their wake. Wang Yun, too, wanted to slam the door and leave, but she was the host here, and still had to take charge of the overall situation, so how could she do as she liked? She could only open her mouth and say, Everyone, let us discuss the details of the Striking Heaven Alliance. Ling Han, the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing arrived at the mountain peak. They found a clean rock, then brought out good wine and food, and began to eat heartily. Additionally, they also plucked over a dozen bowl-sized peaches from that branch of spiritual peach. Their fragrance wafted all over, making them all salivate at the aroma. This is what good food is. As Hunyou ate, she gave her judgment. She was wolfing down so much that her little face and hands were all oily. Zhu Xian, meanwhile, was very reserved, taking small bites and swallowing slowly, displaying fully the demeanor of a refined lady. The three men all had grand ambitions and forthright character. Due to their drunken stupor, they decided to simply recognize each other as brothers. The Rain Emperor was naturally ranked the eldest, Mu Rongqing was second eldest, and Ling Han could only settle for being the youngest, which made him feel very dejected once he had come out of his drunkenness. With his 2 lifetimes added together, he was over 200 years old, and now, he actually had to call 2 young men first brother and second brother. Feng Peyun was another story, as he indeed was older than him, so it was no loss to him to call the former big brother. Still, he only felt momentary depression. Even if they had recognized each other as brothers while they were drunk, that was still because the temperament and character of the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing were to his taste. Actually, Uncle Rabbit, too, wanted to join in on the fun. It said it had lived for several hundred years, so it wanted to become the first brother. As a result, Ling Han and the other 2 looked at it in disdain, and said they would be ashamed to be grouped together with an animal, and so pushed it out of consideration, making it cry out in fury. Although Wang Yiyun meant to keep the event secret, there had been many witnesses, and added with the fact that it was about a spanking, such a captivating subject, news about what had happened the day before very quickly spread all over. When they spoke of Wang Yiyun, everyone would give an "oh" and share an expression of mutual understanding. Naturally, the gossip became more overblown as it spread. At the beginning, it was a mere spanking, but as the gossip spread, it became that Wang Yiyun had been captured by Ling Han, and the young man and woman spent a night together alone. When Wang Yiyun came out, her clothes were disheveled, and she couldn't even close her legs. However, at the same time, Ling Han's battle prowess was sufficiently acknowledged. Everyone was sure that unless the greatest prodigies that had obtained a direct ticket into the Restore Heaven Academy made an appearance, no one else would be a match for Ling Han. Furthermore, they would have to be someone like Small Saber King or Lang Yatian. If they were not that powerful, they couldn't be too weak either. Still, in such a way, Ling Han was considered to have clearly established an opposition with the Blue Thunder sect. The disciples of the other 4 ancient great sects also maintained an acceptable distance from him, so he was unable to act on the plans he had about befriending 1 or 2 disciples of an ancient great sect in order to get hold of an ancient map. However, he found Ken Yi, and had him act on this plan in his stead. Anyways, it was just a map, and no treasure map either, so in his thoughts, it shouldn't be too difficult of an undertaking. After another 3 days, an important moment arrived for Zhu Xian'er. She was about to break through to the flower blossom tier. Actually, since 1 or 2 months ago, she was ready to break through, but Ling Han had her try her utmost to perfect the foundations of her cultivation before breaking through. After all, this was the first step of transcending mortality, so it was extremely important. However, there were really too many cultivation resources available to her when staying by Ling Han's side, thus, in just a short amount of time, she had polished her cultivation in the spiritual pedestal tier to an incredibly sturdy level, and with no way to make her foundations any stronger, she began breaking through. Because she had really accumulated a lot of energy, and also because Ling Han had prepared a large amount of alchemical pills and spirit fruits for her, her breakthrough was smooth as well. In less than half a day's time, she had planted the spiritual seeds, and 3 days later, the divine flowers bloomed, and she had officially entered into the flower blossom tier. Zhu Xian'er was extremely happy. Advancing into the flower blossom tier not only meant that she had taken a very important step on the path of martial arts and that she could fly with her own power, or that she no longer needed to depend on normal food as nutrition, but most importantly, it meant she had obtained an additional 200 years of lifespan, which had drastically slowed down the rate of aging for her. This meant that in the following few dozen years, not only would her beauty not decline, she would even look younger. For women, especially one that could definitely be considered an extreme beauty, what other reward would be better than that? How many divine flowers have you managed to cultivate? Ling Han asked. He was more concerned about Zhu Xian'er's future potential. After all, she was one of the strongest prodigies of the North region, so she had better not neglect her martial arts and affect her advancement because of him. 3 flowers, Zhu Xian'er said, pleasant surprise all over her face. Ordinarily speaking, flower blossom tier cultivators should only be able to cultivate a single divine flower, and only geniuses would be able to cultivate 2, and those that managed to cultivate 3 were definitely considered the geniuses amongst geniuses. With every additional divine flower, one would be able to borrow double the natural energy of the world when they attacked. Furthermore, flower blossom tier cultivators managed to transcend immortality by depending on natural energy. Thus, an additional divine flower did not mean a slight increase to one's battle prowess, but a complete upgrade. Ling Han nodded. 3 flowers was not too bad, and she could be considered one of the top geniuses with this feat. However, for the likes of Yao Hui Yue and Small Saber King, they definitely did not have merely 3 flowers, they could possess 4, or even 5 or 6. Nonetheless, he believed that 6 flowers had to be the limit. In case of someone like him, who had 10 flowers, that was because he possessed 2 spiritual oceans and 2 spiritual pedestals, which was an incredibly unique condition. There should be no one else capable of achieving the same as he. Chapter 637, Buying Million Treasures City. In truth, Ling Han, too, could try breaking through to the spiritual infant tier, but he chose to delay it. In his last life, he was only concerned with pursuing advancement through cultivation levels, but in this life, he naturally would not be so rash. Instead, he wanted to perfect his cultivation on every cultivation level before he chose to begin breaking through. Anyways, he was still young, not even 20 years old yet, so there was no need for him to rush. He wanted to form 30 flashes of sword chi and develop the indestructible heaven scroll until the diamond tier before breaking through to the spiritual infant tier. This way, when he raised his spiritual infant, it would be tempered by his sword ray and supported by the indestructible heaven scroll, so it would be indestructible. However, 29 flashes of sword chi had been recognized as the ultimate limit since ancient times. Even mysterious 3000 was only 3000, and not 3001, which showed how very difficult it was to breach this gap. Furthermore, it was also extremely difficult to form body of diamond. Ling Han had eaten so many natural treasures, but his body was like a bottomless pit. No matter how much he ate, there was no one instance that his body was filled to the brim. Of course, one reason for that was also because he had cultivated the 9 dragons tyrant art, so a lot of essence had been used up on the improvement and strengthening of his physique. On Kenye's side, it was proceeding very smoothly. With the various alchemical pills and treasures that Ling Han provided, he had cultivated an image of himself as the spoilt young master of some hidden great clan, brandishing his various treasures and casually throwing them at others. He looked completely like an idiot who was practically inviting others to con him. He befriended a true disciple of the Heaven's Sword sect, and using various alchemical pills and precious ingredients to pave the way, he threw so much at the latter that he was extremely willing to declare Kenye his brother. When Kenye saw that it was about time, he threw out the secret of the ancient treasure map, and asked him to take out an ancient map so that they could make a comparison and retrieve the treasure together. That true disciple naturally agreed happily. Anyways, there were still over 4 months until the opening of the academy, so there was completely enough time for him to make a return trip. Now, the only thing left was to wait. Another few days passed, and the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing had returned. They had been training all this time in the mountains, improving themselves through continuous battles with the most ferocious of beasts, and also earning some pocket money in the meantime. After all, spiritual infant tier demonic beasts were extremely valuable as their blood, hide, flesh, and bones could all be sold for high prices. However, now they handed all their gains over to Ling Han because only in his hands would they get the most out of these things. Ling Han had never mistreated his own people before, and naturally gave without any reservations to these 2 sworn brothers of his. They could enjoy as they liked the food ingredients and various nutritious foods inside the Black Tower, as well as spiritual fluids. These were all extremely nutritious and nourishing items, and could rapidly speed up the accumulation of origin power. For 2 geniuses like the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing, comprehension of martial arts was nothing too difficult. On the other hand, it was the accumulation of origin power in which they had to make every step they took sturdy and solid, as it was impossible for them to build a castle on empty air. Thus, as the 2 of them increased their comprehension of cultivation in the midst of battles, accompanied with the use of spiritual fluid to increase the accumulation of their origin power, they improved very quickly, and at the rate they were going, they would be able to reach the peak of the spiritual infant tier in 2 years at most. This was something very scary. Even such monsters like the small Saber King and Lang Yatian had only seen hope of breaking through to the deity transformation tier when they were close to their 40s, so no matter how fast they were, they would only have reached the peak of the spiritual infant tier after they were 30 years old. The Rain Emperor was older in the first place, so he couldn't be counted, but Mu Rongqing was only 25 years old. This meant that he would be able to reach the peak of the spiritual infant tier before he was 30. If he was lucky, it would not be impossible for him to break through to the deity transformation tier by the time he was 30 years old. One had to know that the small Saber King and Lang Yatian had obtained the full support of ancient great sects to be able to surpass them in cultivation level. This was naturally a tremendously shocking feat. There was nothing to be done. Ling Han was the Alchemy Emperor, and added with the fact that the Black Tower could speed up the growth of spiritual herbs, it would be strange if their progress was slow. How could such a godly treasure like the Black Tower be inferior to mere worldly existences like the Ultimate Saber Sect and the Heaven Sword Sect? The Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing brought back 2 pieces of news. They were huge news that could stun the whole Middle State, or even this whole world. About a month ago, the Thousand Corpse Sect bought the whole Million Treasures City, the Rain Emperor said. Pooh, Ling Han instantly choked. They could do that? Neither the Spirit Treasures Pavilion nor the Alchemist Society lack wealth. How could they have possibly agreed to selling their base? He asked in confusion. What kind of price did the Thousand Corpse Sect offer that an Ultimatia Shattering Void Tier elite cultivator and 2 heaven-grade alchemists had no way of refusing? If they had not dreaded coming up against these 3, the Thousand Corpse Sect would not have lured them away the first time when they intended to attack the Million Treasures City by force and make it so that it would be too late for them to do anything afterwards. Precisely because they had not wanted to go into a head-on confrontation with these 3 had the Thousand Corpse Sect compromised and bought the Million Treasures City instead. The Thousand Corpse Sect definitely paid an astronomical price, Mu Rongqing said. To be able to move the rich and imposing Spirit Treasures Pavilion and Alchemist Society, the Thousand Corpse Sect must have paid a great price. Furthermore, to move even an ultimate elite of the Shattering Void Tier and 2 heaven-grade alchemists, I surmise that this price involved the secrets of becoming immortal, as well as divine pills, perhaps? Ling Han nodded. In these 10,000 years, aside from Jiang Yufeng, whom he suspected to have entered the realm of immortals, he had not heard of anyone else rumored to have shattered the void and become an immortal. Even Jiang Yufeng's case was mere deduction on Ling Han's part, as there were no legends he had left behind. Feng Peyun had said as well that shattering the void now was possibly very dangerous, so he dared not break through immediately. Instead, he chose to further increase his cultivation, and wait until he had reached the 9th layer of the Shattering Void Tier before making any further moves. For an ancient great sect like the Thousand Corpse Sect, their inheritance was definitely not inferior in any way to the likes of the Heaven Sword Sect. Thus, who knew? They might have got a hold of certain secrets regarding becoming an immortal, and it would be nothing strange if they possessed a few formulae for divine-grade alchemical pills. Whatever was the case, it was a fact that Million Treasures City had now fallen into the possession of the Thousand Corpse Sect. However, since the Thousand Corpse Sect has paid such an astronomical price, their motivisa must definitely be even bigger. Ling Han said slowly. Previously, he had already deduced that either there was a great number of Shattering Void Tier elite corpses buried in the Million Treasures City, or there might be some ultimate treasure there, which would make the Thousand Corpse Sect become even stronger than before. The 5 ancient great sects are very displeased with this matter, and have already decided to deploy troops to attack Million Treasures City. Their stand on this matter is extraordinarily firm, the Rain Emperor said. From this standpoint, the 5 ancient great sects are really hot-blooded. This is practically unlike them. Ling Han shook his head, confusion all over his face. It wasn't that there had never been unrest in history, but it was a rare case that the 5 ancient great sects would make a move. Only when the Thousand Corpse Sect appeared would they become very proactive, as if they had some great enmity with the former. The 5 ancient great sects battling against the Thousand Corpse Sect, this is indeed a big issue. If not handled properly, it may implicate and cause turmoil in the whole world, Ling Han said after some thought. He could not help but sigh. He was currently growing, and his greatest hope was for an environment in which he could cultivate quietly. He definitely did not want to witness a great war happen. The Thousand Corpse sect actually dared to appear in public in such a grand manner. I'm afraid that they must be very confident to do that, the Rain Emperor said. Ling Han nodded. With the Thousand Corpse sect making such a public comeback, it was obvious that they had made preparations for all sorts of scenarios. If they were to be easily destroyed by the 5 ancient great sects, that would be too much of a joke. What's the situation now? He asked. The 5 ancient great sects are currently gathering their troops, and have even issued a request for reinforcements to the whole world in order to destroy the Thousand Corpse sect together, the Rain Emperor said. However, it's very far from us, so the news took some time to get here. Therefore, it's uncertain whether they have begun the battle or are still preparing. Chapter 638, Reckoning. Ling Han thought for a moment, then said with a smile, with our current ability, we would only be able to think about this kind of thing. No matter who wins or loses, it is not something we can interfere with. The Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing exuded a strong battle intent as they both looked impassioned. The Rain Emperor was a formidable character, whose dominating aura was the strongest, whereas Mu Rongqing had a sloppy temperament, being only interested in becoming the world's strongest. The 3 of them had varying characters and personalities, but they shared a common characteristic, and that was all 3 had a furious passion for martial arts. All 3 had steadfast determination and fearless resolution. If that had not been the case, they wouldn't have recognized one another as brothers in the first place. After another 30 years, it will be our turn to make big waves, they declared ruefully and passionately. They wanted to compete with great shattering void-tier elite cultivators after merely 30 years? If these words spread out, others would definitely laugh at them with such a ridiculous notion, but the 3 of them were filled with self-confidence. With their natural talent, as well as Ling Han's alchemical pills, they definitely had the chance to reach shattering void tier and pass judgment ONT the world. Ling Han calmed his emotions, and asked, there was another piece of news? Hehe, this piece of news is a little interesting. The Rain Emperor paused. Not too long ago, a small city in the Middle States suddenly announced its establishment as the Purple Moon Empire, establishing their nation's leader, and created a system of officials for all its citizens to pay respect. Ling Han was dumbfounded. Sumyeon actually established their own nation. What were they playing at? Aside from the desolate north, the 4 regions and the middle state did not have any concept of a nation. There were only the various ancient clans and sects dividing the territory amongst themselves, and each would have jurisdiction over their own territory. In comparison, there were no laws in this world, and the only fact publicly acknowledged was, strength was power. The mutually agreed upon idea was that strength was the law. Comparing the 9 desolate areas with the outer world, in truth, establishing nations was not a bad idea. There would be laws that everyone had to adhere to, which would greatly decrease the amount of bloodshed. Of course, if those in charge were corrupted, then it would be the same whether it was an empire, a sect, or a clan. A sudden thought came to Ling Han. Why were there no empires in the Middle State and the 4 regions? One had to know that power of the nation was a good thing. In the past, the Rain Emperor only had 1 foot into the flower blossom tier, yet was capable of standing against someone who was actually in the flower blossom tier. Aside from the Rain Emperor himself being strong, the power of the nation was also a vital factor. Since power of the nation was so good, why did no other parties consider the idea? In this world, empire is a taboo, Mu Rongqing said. There is a firm law in our south region. Any party can freely fight over territory, but definitely must not establish their own empire. Otherwise, they would be destroyed by the entire south region. The Rain Emperor nodded, and said, I've also searched through ancient records. The founding emperor of our country only thought of establishing a country after discovering a secret scroll from ancient times in the Devil's Sky mystery realm, and if it wasn't for the fact that the desolate north is really too small and too remote from the mainland, we would probably have long been destroyed. I wouldn't have thought of it if we weren't on the subject. Power of the nation is obviously something very good, and beneficial to cultivation. Yet, why have there never appeared any empires in this world? Ling Han wore a curious expression. In his last life, there similarly had not been any empires. However, at that time, his full focus was on alchemy, so he had taken no notice of this fact at all. However, in the ancient times, the real ancient era, there were indeed empires in the world, and furthermore, they were incredibly powerful, he said. The thunderclap ninth heaven, for example, had been obtained from the treasure trove of an ancient empire. Moreover, this was not the strongest mystical power there was either. That was something from dozens of millennia ago. That ancient empire wanted to bring the whole world and ascend to the realm of immortals, but, obviously, they failed their mission. At the time, this ancient empire could be considered to have united the whole world, and was extremely powerful. Could it be that this Purple Moon Empire intends to follow the example? The Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing exclaimed in surprise. Who is the nation's leader? Ling Han asked. His surname is Ma, and is named Ma Duobao. He calls himself the Purple Moon Divine Emperor, the Rain Emperor answered. Pooh, Ling Han once again accidentally spat out his saliva. Fuck, Ma Duobao. He remembered that back in Million Treasures City, Ma Duobao had once earnestly invited him to join in the venture to split open the skies. He had not thought that, after a mere few months, this guy had really performed a great feat. Still, without the support of an extremely powerful party, how long would this Purple Moon Empire last? Hold on, that ancient empire seemed to have failed to split open the skies before their destruction, and Ma Duobao also mentioned he wanted to split open the skies, and even established a nation. Could it be that only a nation could split open the skies? Ling Han felt his thoughts were slightly in a mess. In this life, whatever crazy thing could really happen. Ma Duobao was definitely not an idiot. On the other hand, this man was unfathomable. Ling Han could not see through him at all. Either he had some kind of secret technique, or his ability was at least at the late stage of the heaven tier. On one side, there was the Thousand Corpse sect, which definitely would not be content with their place. They were definitely aiming for all life in this world, wanting to cause great suffering so that they could refine everyone into corpse soldiers. And on the other side, there was the Purple Moon Empire. Since they had established their own nation, then it would be natural to expand their territory, so it was inevitable that they would launch a worldwide expedition, and the might of that ancient empire would reappear. It seems like the world is about to experience a great upheaval. Ling Han sighed. Furthermore, the 5 great sects have also predicted that a great catastrophe akin to what happened 10,000 years ago would happen again. Really, all the excitement is happening at the same time, the Rain Emperor said. We can only work hard at our cultivation, and increase our own power so as to gain the power to protect ourselves and speak, Mu Rongqing concluded. Ling Han and the Rain Emperor nodded. That, Uncle Rabbit had listened from the side for a long time. He raised his little paw, and said, Lord Rabbit has some knowledge about that so-called great catastrophe. Oh, speak quickly. Ling Han was instantly interested. Rabbit put on an act, and said, where is Lord Rabbit's tea? Ah. It had wanted to act coy for a moment longer, but the result was crying out in pain when Hunyo bit him. Say it. Hunyo said in displeasure. This rabbit was really a little lowly. It obviously knew that Hunyo very much liked to bite it, yet still continued to repeatedly provoke Hunyo into biting it. It coughed, then said, there is a myth transmitted with Lord Rabbit's bloodline. Once every 10,000 years or so, there would be a great reckoning in the world. At that time, all life would be in terrible straits, and only a very, very few people would manage to survive. Reckoning? Ling Han was astonished. This was yet another theory. For someone like Lord Rabbit that has an ancestor living in the realm of immortals, we would be those who would be spared, and no one would dare touch a single hair on Lord Rabbit's head. But for those like you, it would be terrible. Rabbit said. Ling Han could not help but snort. This reckoning really bullies the weak but fears the strong. Brat, this is life. Get over it. Rabbit him comforted, but no matter he looked at it, it seemed to be showing off. Reckoning, why does there have to be reckoning? And who would be doing the reckoning? Ling Han asked. Rabbit pointed at the skies, and said, as for why, Lord Rabbit does not know either. The sky? The sky meant the realm of immortals. The Tao of this world should not be wanting to bring ruin to all life. And from the memory crystal that Zi Shuxian had left behind, someone, who wanted to destroy all life in this world, had indeed come from the realm of immortals. Ling Han still came back to that old problem: if the realm of immortals really wanted to do a reckoning, with merely the power of the 5 ancient great sects, how could they possibly stop them? There had to be another reason for it, and the answer was possibly hidden inside the Clear Harmony Palace Hall. Ling Han could not help but want even more urgently to obtain an ancient map. Ling Han, come out to your death. Chapter 639, The Three Brothers Join Forces. Ling Han, come out and die, a cold voice rang out. It was as if a blade had sliced through, and leaves from around them dropped, torn into pieces. Quite a number of people threw up blood, and they were even more shocked. Who was this man that would be so terrifying merely his voice alone could cause them to collapse? Third brother, your enemy? Mu Rongqing asked. He looked very spirited. Wait for me to take him down. Ling Han smiled, and said, second brother, I fear you are no match for him. Oh, who is that man? Even the Rain Emperor had become curious, and looked to be filled with battle intent. Small Saber King. Wang, a figure appeared. He had a tall, slender build, and saber intent wound all over his body, transforming into uncountable sabers of various shapes and sizes. There were long and short sabers, gold and silver sabers, and there were closely woven patterns on every blade, exuding a powerful aura. Everyone felt terror. There were some who were forced to their knees, which overwhelmed them with shock. One had to know that all those who could come to this place were geniuses, and no matter what, had at least formed one flash of qi, having the potential to become a ruler within martial arts. But even so, they could not defy this man's aura, which showed how utterly terrifying this person was. A ruler amongst rulers. In this place, many geniuses had gathered, and as close to a month had passed, there were naturally even more present, but due to the oppressive aura of Small Saber King, 12,000 people could not even release even the slightest sound, as they were all subdued by a single person. This was the bearing that a ruler amongst rulers should have. Merely standing there would force innumerable geniuses to bow their heads in submission. Ling Han stepped out, and the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing stood on either side of him, showing clearly their attitude that they would advance or retreat with him. Small Saber King, someone at the peak of the spiritual infant tier. Even if the three of them joined forces, no one would say anything. The difference in cultivation level was there, after all. Putting aside the idea of 3 people attacking together, even if 10 people attacked together, they would not be blamed either. No way, this brat is enemies with Small Saber King too? TSK, just some time ago, he did that to Fairy Yi Yun, and offended the Blue Thunder sect. And now, he's being hunted down by Small Saber King of the Absolute Saber sect. Out of the 5 ancient great sects, he's actually offended 2 of them. Why does Small Saber King want to kill this brat? Could it be that Small Saber King likes Fairy Yi Yun? No way, I heard that Fairy Yi Yun is in love with Lang Yitian. TSK, a love triangle, what a mess. No, now that this brat is added into the bunch, it's obviously a love rectangle. The spectators mumbled amongst themselves. Not only women, but in fact men also tended to be quite gossipy, especially someone like Li Fengyu, who would want nothing more than to yell out such spicy gossip. Small Saber King stood proudly in midair. He had been on the hunt for Ling Han all this time, yet lost his tail, and it was only when he heard that Ling Han caused a great commotion at Wang Yiyun's banquet some time ago that he rushed all the way here. As his eyes swept over Ling Han and his 2 sworn brothers, condescension curled the corners of his lips up as he said, "With the power of just the three of you, you intend to stop me? How would we know if we don't try?" Ling Han said heroically. These two sworn brothers of his were similarly rulers in martial arts, especially the Rain Emperor. As the saying went, a great talent matured slowly, but on the other hand, good preparation was the key to success, so he had terrifying battle prowess. Snort, foolish. Small Saber King was no longer interested in speaking, and directly drew out his saber in a slash. A terrifying saber chi rolled past, as if it was a blade that would startle even the sky, and slid down from the skies. Pseudo-ray. Ling Han gave a loud shout, and directly drew out the demon birth sword to parry. Against a powerful foe like Small Saber King, it was impossible for him to hold back in the slightest. If he did, that would be joking around with his own life. With a ding, the treasured sword clashed with Saber Ray, but Ling Han was forced into a sliding retreat. His feet were like two spades that dug out deep grooves in the incredibly hard mountain rocks. Break! Ling Han shouted loudly, and as his long sword waved down in a slash, Pu, the Saber Ray was cut in half, and slashed past either side of him. In the meantime, the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing had already charged out. Both of them used fist techniques, and with martial intent and origin power wrapping around their fists, they possessed very terrifying destructive power behind their blows, which enabled them to take on a sharp blade with their bare fists. Hang, two minor characters that had just broken through to the spiritual infant tier actually want to stand against me? Small Saber King sneered, and pulled out his saber in a slash, his aura majestic. The Rain Emperor roared in rage, and as he brandished his fists, Fist Ray rushed forth, extremely ferocious. Small Saber King finally exclaimed in surprise. Ray, even if it was the condensation of 10 flashes of chi, it surpassed 30 separate flashes of chi. This was a natural suppression. Mu Rongqing showed his might as well. Although he had not condensed a ray, in terms of chi, he had formed a total of 29 flashes, so his battle prowess was similarly not to be underestimated. On the ground, Ling Han charged up with his sword as well. Ha ha ha, 3 minor characters, not worth mentioning. Small Saber King immediately regained his cool. Though the Rain Emperor had condensed a ray, he had broken through when he had merely formed 10 flashes of chi, so his power was limited. Meanwhile, he was at an absolute advantage in cultivation level as he had half a foot into the deity transformation tier, whereas his battle prowess had long since spiked up to this level. He had at least 5 stars of the deity transformation tier, so he was spine-chillingly powerful. With a slash of his saber, Ling Han and his brothers, who dared not take it head-on, could only retreat. Ha 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 ha. Small Saber King laughed loudly, and slashed wildly at Ling Han. This man had killed his father, which filled him with deep-seated hatred. Furthermore, there was also a little girl that had obtained his Thunderclap 9th Heaven mystical power, whom he definitely had to kill as well. He would directly pluck out her soul from her body. Ling Han gave a humph, and lightning flickered over his body. In an instant, he had a parried by the side of the Small Saber King, and swiped his sword forth in a slash. What? Small Saber King exclaimed in shock. It was not because Ling Han moved too fast, but rather because there was a flicker of lightning with his movement, that obviously was the Thunderclap 9th Heaven. How could that be? A mystical power could only be learned by one person, so why would Hu Niu be followed by Ling Han? 2 people who had both learned Thunderclap 9th Heaven? If he knew that not only Ling Han and Hu Niu, but also Heli and Sun Shui had learnt the Thunderclap 9th Heaven, who knew what kind of expression he would have? He would probably be so overcome with shock that he would not be able to accept such a fact. How could you have possibly learnt the Thunderclap 9th Heaven? Small Saber King exclaimed in a severe tone. It was obvious that Hu Niu was still on the ground, and it was impossible that she was capable of astral projection, so where had Ling Han learnt this mystical power? None of your business. Ling Han brandished his sword in a quick slash. 29 flashes of chi condensed into pseudo-ray, which whizzed toward Small Saber King. This was a pseudo-ray that had been shot out by a level 10 spirit tool, so its power was almost no weaker than a real ray's. Even small Saber King dared not be too careless, and had to wield his saber to parry. Otherwise, if he was hit by the sword ray, even he would be deeply injured. The eyes of the small Saber King iced over, and he said with a sneer, "All right, then I only have to kill you alone." Though he did not take Hunyo seriously, the speed of the little girl's movements shocked even him, and he absolutely could not guarantee that he would be able to take her down successfully. He pushed out with his left hand, and swept it towards the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing, whereas his right hand wielded his saber to slash towards Ling Han. Every single strike was merciless, he only wanted to take Ling Han's life. Ling Han and his brothers joined forces to attack, but small Saber King was really too strong. His battle prowess that was on the level of the deity transformation tier allowed him to be at an absolute advantage, and every blow he struck caused Ling Han and his brothers to be battered and exhausted. Unless Ling Han used the exterminating dragon star arrow to impede him, at this moment, the three of them were already heading for a crushing defeat. Ling Han swallowed a pill. It was the 5 Revolutions Black Jade pill. He had concocted a total of 3 pills. In the previous battle against Shenyuan Ziguang, he had already taken one, and the pill he was taking now was the second one. As the alchemical pill entered his stomach, its effects were immediately seen, and he gained an upgrade of a total 9 stars to his battle prowess. Initially, his battle prowess had reached 15 stars of the spiritual infant tier, or perhaps even more than that, and now, with a power upgrade of 9 stars of battle prowess, he had immediately soared up to the level of the deity transformation tier. Chapter 640, Yao Hui Yue Comes to Aid. This was really inconceivable. He was merely in the flower blossom tier, yet already possessed the battle prowess of the deity transformation tier. Although that was only equivalent to having 1 star of the deity transformation tier. Still, the effects of the alchemical pill were rapidly weakening. Previously, when Ling Han had taken the first 5 Revolution Black Jade pill, he had gained a power upgrade of 10 battle stars, and though his power upgrade had only decreased by a single star now, it was still indeed on the decline. There was nothing that could be done about it. All alchemical pills would have an immunity level, and the higher grade the alchemical pill, the higher the immunity level would be. Now, he could still increase his battle prowess by 9 stars, and next time, it would drop down to 8 stars, followed by 7 stars, 6 stars, 5 stars, and, finally, there would be no effects at all. Just like when one ate 1,000-year ginseng to extend one's lifespan, the first stalk could add another 30 years of life, but the effects of the second one would be halved, and the third one would be once again halved. With a long whistle, Ling Han brandished his sword in a slash. He had finally gotten the qualification to stand against small Saber King. Still, there was still quite a big gap between the two of them. 5 stars against 1 star, that was an absolute domination. Thankfully, there was still the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing impeding from the side. Although their respective battle prowess was far from the deity transformation tier, they were still geniuses, after all. One had already formed Ray, whereas the other had formed 29 flashes of Qi, and not even small Saber King dared take on their attacks carelessly. Ling Han became the main attacker, and naturally was too busy to retreat to a farther distance so that he could pose a threat to the small Saber King. The might of archery could only be displayed with adequate distance, and in a close-up battle, there was practically no space for archery to be used. However, the flash of lightning was wrapped all over his entire body. This was a great mystical power from the ancient era. The power of lightning was extremely terrifying, and after being attacked, not only would one experience a numbness in limbs, there would even be a stagnation in origin power, which greatly decreased small Saber King's battle prowess. This caused small Saber King to be enraged, and have even more thoughts about the thunderclap 9th heaven. If he could learn this mystical power, it would be enough to raise his battle prowess by another 5 stars, no, 10. Just think about it. He was only at the peak of the spiritual infant tier, yet would be capable of killing an elite cultivator in the 9th layer of the deity transformation tier. How shocking would that be? His killing intent blazed, and he slashed forth with his saber, endlessly striking blows at Ling Han. Ling Han used the demon fairy steps. He was the main attacker, but was not so stupid that he would take on Small Saber King on directly with his strength. There was still quite a large gap between the two of them, and he completely did not have the qualification to take on the latter in a face-to-face confrontation. Small Saber King displayed a bearing of invincibility. Alone, he was battling against 3 super geniuses, and not only was he not on the losing side, he actually completely gained the upper hand. He could only be described with the word terrifying. All around them, the dozen thousands of people all watched in astonishment. They were shocked by how powerful these 4 people were. Small Saber King was strong, but Ling Han and his brothers were not weak either. After all, there was a gap in cultivation level. Otherwise, if all of them were fighting with the same cultivation level, it really would be undecided who would win or lose. But it was at this moment that another figure appeared, and charged at them with a sword in hand. Who was this again? A slash swept out, and 29 flashes of sword chi danced. Everyone was dumbfounded. What was wrong with this world? Forming 10 flashes of chi would qualify one to condense his chi to form Ray and call himself a ruler amongst rulers, and there were very few that managed to form 11 or 12 flashes of chi. But now, people that had formed 29 flashes of chi appeared in quick succession, and it seemed like they were very commonplace nowadays. This attack was aimed at Small Saber King. Yao Hui Yue. Small Saber King roared furiously. He struck out with his saber at the sword chi, and pang, the sword chi was instantly shattered, but he was also now too busy to attack Ling Han. The number 2 sword of the world, Yao Hui Yue. Who would have thought that this person that had suddenly made a move would actually be Yao Hui Yue? Even Ling Han was slightly stunned. There did not seem to be much friendly relations between himself and Yao Hui Yue, so why did the latter act like he was a very close friend of his now? This man is my rival, and can only be killed with my hand. Yao Hui Yue stood with sword in hand. As the mountain breeze blew, the corner of his robes floated, and he looked like a deity descended. The Small Saber King was enraged. This was his fuck reason. He looked at Yao Hui Yue darkly, and said, "You are still unskilled. Even if there were 10 of you, you would be no match for me." Yet Yao Hui Yue did not take his words to heart at all, and said, "You have only cultivated a few more years than I. If we battled on the same cultivation level, or at the same age, it would be a piece of cake for me to defeat you. Small Saber King, I have never taken you seriously. The greatest genius of the Absolute Saber sect is Su Xiu Ran, and only he is qualified to become my rival." The Small Saber King could not help but look angry. This was undisguised looking down on him. His saber shook, and he said, "Yao Hui Yue, do you want to die? Do you have that ability to kill me?" Yao Hui Yue stepped forward with his sword in hand, and joined forces with Ling Han against Small Saber King. He, too, had advanced into the spiritual infant tier, but was only at the 3rd layer of the spiritual infant tier. Still, his battle prowess was terrifyingly high and extremely shocking. The treasured sword he wielded was also a high-level spirit tool, and as he slashed out with 10,000 techniques returned to 1, which had shocking destructive power, even Small Saber King had to face him with utmost seriousness. Naturally, Yao Hui Yue had also condensed pseudo-ray. He had not yet breached the huge barrier that was 30 flashes of chi, and thus, did not choose to form point. Otherwise, if he chose to use 10,000 techniques returned to 1 at that time, this destructive power would be even more astonishing. Ling Han sighed internally. He, too, knew the mysterious 3,000 technique. Unfortunately, after he came to the middle state, he did not dare to use it much anymore. Only when it was a matter of life or death would he actually use it. However, he was now the main attacker, and blocked Small Saber King's direct attacks, and Yao Hui Yue, the Rain Emperor, and Mu Rongqing were able to calmly unleash their full battle prowess, which naturally posed a great threat to Small Saber King. Merely looking at the circumstances, Ling Han and the others were naturally still in a crisis, just as if they were walking on a tightrope. However, Small Saber King did not appear to have his victory assured either, because he only needed to be slightly careless, and it was possible that lose the whole game, and be destroyed by Yao Hui Yue and the other two. Especially Yao Hui Yue, the might of 10,000 techniques returned to one was really too powerful. Damn it! Small Saber King roared in rage, yet abruptly turned around and left. With these four great prodigies joining forces, even if he was at an absolute advantage in terms of cultivation level, he could do nothing else to them. It would be meaningless to continue the battle. He could meet his gains or losses bravely, and so left at once. He would not believe that there would always be so many geniuses following by Ling Han's side. Damn it, he had not brought the diamond puppet with him. If not, with the aid of a puppet on the level of the deity transformation tier, it would be a piece of cake to totally annihilate these four men. Ling Han put away his sword, then looked at Yao Hui Yue, and said with a smile, "Yao Hui Yue, I really had not thought that you would step out." "Hang, I was not helping you. I merely did not like how Small Saber King was taking unfair advantage with his superior strength. Furthermore, I should be the one to end your life, and this was something that I had said long ago." Yao Hui Yue said coldly. "Ha ha ha, I am much obliged." Ling Han clapped a hand on Yao Hui Yue's shoulder, and felt that this guy was actually quite interesting. "Don't act so familiar with me, I am not your friend." Yao Hui Yue declared coldly. "It's fine even if we're not friends." "Come, let us drink some wine," Ling Han said, smiling, and forcefully pulled Yao Hui Yue down to sit. Xian Air, Yao Hui Yue did not refuse too firmly. He dropped onto the ground, and immediately looked towards Zhu Xian Air. Yet when he saw her face, he could not help but look extremely astonished. Who was this woman? Zhu Xian Air merely smiled reservedly, and maintained an appropriate distance. Yao Hui Yue was stunned. Judging by her figure, this was definitely Zhu Xian Air. Also, when he called her name, she had responded. This was really Zhu Xian Air? This was definitely not his Zhu Xian Air. Chapter 641, Heaven Cloud Purple Thunder. Yao Hui Yue felt unbearably pained. His Zhu Xian Air actually looked like this? In the north region, merely her figure and the personality she revealed were sufficient to entrance him. He would willingly fall to his knees for her, but now, after seeing her real appearance, it was as if someone had sliced a knife into his heart. This discrepancy was really too big. And just like that, his first love came to nothing. Ling Han laughed loudly, and slung an arm around Yao Hui Yue's shoulders as he said, "Small Yao, even if we fight to death tomorrow, that is something that would only happen tomorrow. Thanks for today. Come, let us drink some wine. No one's going home sober." For someone with excellent self-discipline like Yao Hui Yue, he was naturally unwilling to get himself drunk, but now, the only thing he wanted was to drink himself to forget all his troubles. Without a word, he sat down, and did not refuse any who offered him a drink. He gulped down one cup after another, and very quickly, with a paw, he collapsed and began snoring away. "What poor capacity for liquor," the Rain Emperor commented with a laugh. Meanwhile, Ling Han said in a meaningful tone, "When one drinks wine with a troubled mind, it is easier to get drunk." When Yao Hui Yue awoke the next day, he discovered that he was lying alone on a rock. The moment he got to his feet, he felt a throbbing headache. The effects of a hangover were kicking in. He gripped his head, and swore that he definitely would not get himself drunk in future. He looked up at the skies, and could not help but show a self-mocking smile. Previously, he kept himself at Zhu Xian Air's beck and call, and tried his best to gain her favor, but had he really fallen in love with her? She was a woman whose face he had never even seen before, so how could it be possible that he would develop true feelings for her? It was simply that he had deceived himself with his own feelings, and imagined her to be an extreme beauty, which was why he admired her so completely, and now, his dream had shattered. From now onwards, he could place his full focus and attention on martial arts. Yao Hui Yue's thoughts cleared, and instantly, an expression of great happiness appeared on his face because he had touched the barrier to the 30th flash of sword chi. Indeed, a great emotional upheaval had a great influence on grasping chi. Previously, no matter how hard he cultivated, he could not get the gist of it. "I want to become the number one person in the young generation," he declared passionately, completely forgetting his disappointment in romance. The greatest genius naturally had unsurpassed self-discipline. Ling Han waited another 5 days. Qin was still awaiting the arrival of that disciple of Heaven's Sword sect when another piece of news reached the man. Earthquake had happened at the Great Brilliant Mountains, and it seemed like a great treasure had appeared. Flashes of lightning shot skywards and illuminated the skies. For this reason, a great many people had already departed to make their way towards Great Brilliant Mountains. It was located in the Flying Blossom County anyways, and it would only be a matter of 1 to 2 days to get there. Waiting for Qin, Ling Han could only stay behind calmly. Furthermore, flashes of lightning did not mean that an ultimate treasure had really appeared. Previously, when he had guided lightning into his body to cultivate the thunderclap 9th heaven, hadn't he also caused lightning to flash for a whole night and day? Who knew? This might be caused by a person who cultivated a thunder-type technique and was currently taking a very important step in his cultivation. Ling Han waited patiently, but the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing had already set out. They said that if there really was some treasure with lightning traits, they would definitely bring it back for Ling Han so that he could truly form a body of lightning. This was his two brothers' sincerity. It would not be appropriate for Ling Han to refuse, so he could only watch as they left. However, Ling Han did indeed very much want to form a body of lightning. Currently, he could only speed up his movement with the aid of lightning, but if he could actually become lightning, his speed could still increase another level, and be on par with Hunyo's. Great Brilliant Mountains, aren't they one of the mountain ranges suspected to be boundless mountains? Zhu Xian'er asked Ling Han after she found out. Ling Han nodded, and said, "It can't be such a coincidence that the Clear Harmony Palace Hall really is there." It was not impossible, because Zi Shuexian cultivated power of lightning, and there were flashes of lightning soaring skywards at the Great Brilliant Mountains, which was really too much of a coincidence. "We'll wait 1 more day, and if there is still no news from Qin, we'll set out." Ling Han decided to go and take a look. However, when Qin came over that night, he brought back a piece of bad news. That true disciple of the Heaven's Sword sect was actually unable to bring back an ancient map. He said that his sect watched over it extremely closely, and treated it like it was a top-grade cultivation or martial arts technique, so there was no way they would allow it to be seen by outsiders. Not just outsiders were unable to see it. Even if their own disciples wanted to study the ancient map, they had to ascend to a certain level, such as the Heaven tier, or be a prodigious, genius disciple like Yao Hui Yue. Fuck. Ling Han could not help but curse. It was just a map. Was there a need to treasure it to this extent? The Heaven's Sword sect feared that they would find out something. Was it the secret that Zi Shuexian had left behind? It should not be possible. How would they know that she had left behind last words? Moreover, so many years have passed, and it could be that the place was eternally buried underground, or had been destroyed completely. These 5 great sects were acting abnormally. Ling Han hesitated no longer. Together with Zhu Xian'er and Hunyo, he rushed towards the Great Brilliant Mountains. Naturally, Rabbit followed them as well. All day, it would chew on 1,000-year ginseng like it was a carrot, and boast shamelessly that this was only interest. Only when Ling Han paid him 2 stalks of Dragon's Blood Overlord ginseng would he no longer have to pay it interest. The consequence of having such a bad mouth was naturally being bitten by Hunyo, which caused it to yowl in pain. Yet, it still made no change in its behavior, just asking to be bitten. Talking and laughing, having fun and bickering all the way there, they soon arrived at the Great Brilliant Mountains. The Flying Blossom County was not the largest county in the Middle State, but was definitely the county that had the most mountain ranges. This Great Brilliant Mountains were also a huge mountain range, extending over several hundred miles, shocking in its great size. This place was filled with a primitive air. There were terrifying demonic beasts rampaging here. Common people dared not travel too deep into the mountains, as the slightest bit of carelessness could cause them to lose their lives. Ling Han glanced over. The trees here all grew like they were precious swords, and the average height of the trees here was 300 m and above. They grew straight and upright, branches were rarely seen, and the sight of them made for an image of austerity and harshness. And in the east of the mountain range, there was indeed a flash of lightning shooting skywards, rushing forth, prancing and sweeping over the whole mountain peaks. Let's go and take a look. Ling Han and the others flew towards that area. Now that Zhu Xian'er had broken through to the flower blossom tier, the power of their team could be considered quite strong. Very soon, they arrived at the foot of the mountains. They could see occasional flashes of lightning rush out halfway up the mountains. This was the origin of the flashes of lightning. It had affected the whole mountain, so no one dared approach. An expression of utter astonishment appeared on Ling Han's face, and in spite of himself, he exclaimed, "Heaven Cloud Purple Thunder." A brat like you actually knows about the Heaven Cloud Purple Thunder? Rabbit asked in surprise, looking very curious. This is one of the 10 great ultimate thunders of ancient times. What 10 great ultimate thunders? Zhu Xian'er asked curiously. Rabbit was the type to get hyped up in front of an audience. With a willing listener, it instantly got the urge to show off, yet had not predicted that he would be the target of a ferocious glare from Hunyo. In the end, it rubbed the many wounds that had yet to recover on its backside, and dared not seek trouble. Thus, it said, there are spirits in the world. Even this mountain and water, this stone and fire, could possibly grow their own consciousness and become a unique kind of life form. Oh, so aren't they fire spirits, stone spirits, and water spirits then? Zhu Xian'er came to a realization. Then, she clapped her hands abruptly, and exclaimed, "Could it be that there is a thunder spirit here?" Ling Han nodded, and said, "That should be the case. Furthermore, it is an impressive guy too." Chapter 642, Entering the Zone of Thunder. How impressive? Zhu Xian'er asked. Ling Han thought for a moment, then said seriously, "There are differences in strength for even spirits developed by the world. To rank thunder spirits in terms of power, Heaven Cloud Purple Thunder could be ranked amongst the top 10, so it's very powerful. Then how would the Big Rock Man and Strange Fire be ranked?" Zhu Xian'er was curious. Only when there was something to compare against would there be a clearer understanding. Ling Han made a rough comparison, and said, "Small Rock, at most, can be ranked in the top 100, and Strange Fire couldn't even be counted in the top 100 before, but after being refined, it should be able to rank in the top 100. Only now did Zhu Xian'er's expression change. Merely those being ranked in the top 100 had such great power, so how powerful would a spirit ranked in the top 10 be? Just like the prodigy role of the North region. At that time, being in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier would qualify one to be ranked in the top 100, but what kind of existence would the top 10 be? The spiritual pedestal tier. There was no small gap between the two. Looking at it this way, this Heaven Cloud Purple Thunder would be very terrifying. Ling Han looked closely, and said, "The uncontrolled appearance of lightning is proof that the thunder cloud is about to appear. If it really became something that possesses intelligence, I fear no one would be able to obtain it." Putting aside how terrifying the battle prowess this thunder spirit would have, merely in terms of speed, how many people could catch up to it? Ling Han was only in the flower blossom tier, but his speed was enough to be on par with the deity transformation tier. A thunder spirit had a body purely made out of thunder, so how fast could it be? Perhaps only if a shattering void tier ultimate elite cultivator moved would it be caught. Hold on. Ling Han paused. Those years ago, the Zishuesian was definitely in the shattering void tier, so could this thunder spirit actually have been caught by her? It had been suppressed here all this while, and after these 10,000 years had passed, the strength of its fetters had weakened, and coupled with the environmental changes incited by the earthquake, the restrictions weakened further. Finally, the thunder spirit managed to escape, and began the last step of its metamorphosis? This place, could it really be the boundless mountains from years ago? Ling Han was moved. He was yet unable to transform into lightning, but if he could refine the heaven cloud purple thunder, he would definitely be able to reach major achievement in his cultivation of the thunderclap ninth heaven. No matter what, he would at least reach minor achievement level, and he would have truly learned it, and not be half-assed like it was now. He was so excited that even his whole body was trembling. By that time, how terrifying would his battle prowess be? By then, he'd probably completely be able to battle an enemy on a whole cultivation tier higher than himself. He, a flower blossom tier cultivator, could fight on equal footing with an opponent in the deity transformation tier. That really sounded like something out of a myth. I am only one step away from Body of Diamond, and also one step away from 30 flashes of chi. If I really could obtain this heaven cloud purple thunder and refine it, who knows, I might be able to reach Body of Diamond and form 30 flashes of chi. At that time, I would be able to condense a ray, birth a spiritual infant, and thunder and lightning would temper my physical body all in one go. Thus, once I break through to spiritual infant tier, should be able to battle on equal footing against the strongest deity transformation tier cultivators. This was really inconceivable. If one could battle an opponent 5 battle stars stronger than himself, he would be considered a super genius, and those that could battle with a power gap of 10 stars would be nature-defying ultra-geniuses the likes of the Sword Emperor and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. But if Ling Han released his full power, he would be able to fight someone 20 stars stronger than himself. Of course, this took into account the 3 mystical powers, the Demon Birth Sword, the mysterious 3000 technique, and the indestructible Heaven Scroll. If he excluded any of these trump cards, that would mean that his battle prowess would drop a few stars. However, if he really managed to fuse with this strange thunder, he could possess more than 20 stars of battle prowess with merely the 3 mystical powers and fighting barehanded. And that would be enough to suppress the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, that fierce woman. Ling Han mumbled. No matter what, he was a chauvinistic male, so he would definitely not resign himself to being suppressed by the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Still, I don't know what level this fierce woman currently is. Even if she is the lowest level immortal, I'm afraid that she could still suppress me with a single finger. AI, the path to suppressing the fierce woman is long, and I still have to search everywhere for a means. Ling Han was absent-minded for a while, then snapped his fingers, and said, Xian Er, you should stay here. Zhu Xian Er understood, and nodded. She pretended to want to say something quiet to Ling Han, and pulled him into the forest. When Ling Han extended his divine sense to take her into the Black Tower, she planted a kiss on Ling Han's cheek first before entering into the Black Tower. This girl. Ling Han shook his head. He had occasionally spoken of the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden to Zhu Xian Er, and most likely, his momentary absent-mindedness previously had been accurately interpreted by the latter that he had been missing the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Zhu Xian Er was clever in how she was obviously jealous, yet treated Ling Han even more tenderly than before, so Ling Han too would remember her closely in his heart. Women truly are transformed from demons. At any place or time, they desire to steal your heart, Ling Han mused as he walked out of the forest. Hunyo placed her hands at her hips and declared with utmost seriousness, Nyo not transformed from demon. Ling Han could not help but laugh loudly. Then, he turned to look at Rabbit and said, Hoodlum Rabbit, in front of us, the heaven cloud purple thunder is about to appear, and the power of lightning is incredibly dangerous. Do you still intend to follow? If you die, I can only plant the 2 stalks of Dragon's Blood Overlord Ginseng in front of your grave next year. Go away. Lord Rabbit is going to have a life as long as 100 years, and definitely is no short-lived rabbit. Rabbit flexed its tiny paws. Haven't you already lived a few 100 years? Hunyo said curiously. That's a very long life. Rabbit was dejected, and replied, Lord Rabbit misspoke. Can't I live as long as 10,000 years? Then take responsibility for your own life, and it's your own responsibility whatever the consequences, Ling Han said, smiling. He and Hunyo had already learnt the thunderclap 9th heaven, and so had a close affinity with power of lightning. Compared to any other, they were better able to withstand the power of lightning. Furthermore, worse come to worst, didn't he still have the Black Tower as a backup plan? Rabbit was disdainful. Didn't they know that the characteristic trait of rabbits was that they could flee very fast? In flight, if Lord Rabbit admitted to be second place, what person would dare to claim to be first? The 2 people and 1 rabbit advanced. The power of lightning had enshrouded the whole peak. The purple-colored lightning was incredibly terrifying. It would scatter everywhere, and upon striking the trees or the mountain rocks, without an exception, they were all reduced to ash. Ling Han stretched out a finger, and Z absorbed the power of lightning that had overflowed. The 5 elements mix chaos lotus moved and its stalk shone, guiding the power of lightning to traverse throughout Ling Han's body, allowing his physique to take 1 step closer to transforming into a body of lightning. This power of lightning was insignificant, so it was naturally extremely slow to transform it, but Ling Han did not mind in the slightest. At most, this could only be considered an appetizer, whereas the main course was the heaven cloud purple thunder. As long as it had not completely transformed into a thunder spirit, it could be devoured. But if it succeeded to transform into a spirit, he had best flee. Hunyo was even more of a monster than Ling Han. She already had a body of lightning, and the power of lightning actually scrambled to enter into her body, which caused her to giggle uncontrollably as if she was being tickled. Really, different people had different lives. He had obviously also cultivated the thunderclap 9th heaven, so why was there such a tremendous gap between the 2 of them? Ling Han sighed, and was very envious of Hunyo. Don't be envious. This girl's ancestor is definitely a supreme elite from the realm of immortals. Even Lord Rabbit has to admit defeat in front of her bloodline inheritance and astonishing powers. Rabbit said from the side. Ling Han gave an "oh" and said, "You think that Hunyo's ancestor is some supreme elite from the realm of immortals? What else could be the case? Just tell Lord Rabbit, how else could a kid of 7 or 8 reach the flower blossom tier?" Rabbit said in a tone of certainty. Ling Han picked Rabbit up and said, "It seems that you have much of an understanding about the realm of immortals. So tell me, how many different levels are immortals divided into?" Chapter 643, A Dog That Blocks the Way. Rabbit rolled its eyes at Ling Han, and said, "You think your Lord Rabbit is an immortal? How would I know when I've never been to the realm of immortals? Then how do you know that Hunyo's ancestor is a supreme elite from the realm of immortals?" Ling Han interrogated. "Che, how could she possibly be such a monster if her ancestor was not a supreme elite?" Rabbit humphed. Ling Han shook his head, and thought that it was not Hunyo's ancestor that was awesome, but she. The spirit base in her dantian was too terrifying. At least until now, Ling Han had not felt a stronger pressure than that from anyone else. Not in his last life, nor in this one. Not even those at the apex of humanity like Feng Peyun and that giant silver spider that were in shattering void tier could compare to a mere glance form that maiden. The more time passed, and the higher his cultivation level advanced, Ling Han grew increasingly wary towards that human-shaped spirit base, and felt that it was increasingly inconceivable to him. Ling Han looked at how happy Hunyo was, and there was only one wish inside his heart, that Hunyo could always be so unfettered and carefree. As they advanced towards the mid-mountain area, the power of lightning became stronger and stronger, and Rabbit was forced to circulate origin power as defense. Though it was a demonic beast that had a strong physique, it would not be able to withstand the continued barrage of lightning. Without considering anything else, even if it was merely his snow-white rabbit's hide being charred, it'd rather it did not happen. Ling Han and Hunyo, on the other hand, advanced smoothly. Though the power of lightning here was powerful, it was not berserk, so they could absorb it as easily as if it was thunder-aligned spiritual chi. The only difference was that it was denser, as it could take actual form and appear. Naturally, they were not the first group of people to come here. There was a great number of people already in the process of ascending the mountain. They had all stretched out their origin power to shield themselves, and every step they took was difficult. No one dared to soar in the skies. The lightning in the skies was too chaotic, appearing as if it was the heaven's wrath. Perhaps only deity transformation tier cultivators would dare force their way through. Otherwise, everyone else would simply have to obediently walk on the ground. Those walking ahead moved slower and slower. After all, there were not many that had a thunder-aligned spirit base, so they had to use their own origin power to shield themselves. Thus, they expended considerable amounts of origin power, and it was also a harsh burden on their stamina. For those that did not cultivate body techniques, they could only take a rest every few steps. Ling Han very soon stopped walking. That was because a narrow and winding road actually appeared in front of them, but there was a person that had actually sat himself down in the middle of the path to rest. If one wanted to continue the journey by passing over his head, it would be inevitable that he would be attacked by the lightning, which was an extremely dangerous thing. Hey, please either take a few steps ahead, or take a few steps back. Don't block this path that everybody has to pass through, Ling Han said. That was a man in his 30s. He was a high-level spiritual infant tier cultivator, and could even possibly have reached the peak. Though his blood and vitality was strong, he was not as young as he looked. After all, once a cultivator broke through to the flower blossom tier, his aging would be slowed. Spiritual infant tier cultivators possessed a 500-year-long lifespan. Only those whose real age was below 200 years old would appear no different than someone in their 30s. That man swept a sideways look at Ling Han and Hun Yo, and could not help but throw a look of despise at them. He said in disdain, "A mere junior in the flower blossom tier dares to ask me to make way? TSK, you're going to be in big trouble. Lord Rabbit guarantees it with my integrity." Rabbit immediately took delight in the man's upcoming misfortune. Demonic beast. That man gasped in shock. This rabbit actually could speak a human language. Make way. Ling Han's expression had also turned cold. That man no longer bothered about a rabbit knowing how to speak in a human language, and turned back to Ling Han. He said with a sneer, "You actually dare to speak to me in this way? Are you tired of living?" Lord Rabbit thinks that you're the one who's tired of living. Rabbit always had to interrupt. Ling Han said calmly, as the saying goes, a good dog does not block the way. So, I had best kick away a naughty dog like you. How dare you? That man erupted into a towering rage, and actually made the first move. He stretched open his hand, and a black-colored whip flew out, twining towards Ling Han's head. An expression of cruelty appeared on his face. As long as it was entwined in his whip, with the terrifying attack of his origin power, he would be able to instantly pluck Ling Han's head from his shoulders. A cold light flashed in Ling Han's eyes too. Putting aside the fact that this man blocked the way, not allowing others to pass, he was really vicious with how he aimed to kill from his first move alone. There was naturally no need to be merciful towards such a man. Ling Han moved as well. Lightning encircled his hand, popping and crackling, and he took hold of the whip firmly. The power of lightning instantly passed through the whip to its wielder. "Ah!" that man exclaimed. When the power of lightning was transmitted over, his whole right arm was numbed by the electricity. Furthermore, he had lost all feeling in his fingers, so he could not help but loosen his hand, and the whip dropped from it. He hurriedly stretched out his left hand to once again take hold of his whip. It was created from entwining flying cloud gold silk around blackwood cane, and was extremely valuable. But, the whip twisted around like it was a snake, and shot towards Ling Han quickly. Soon, it had fallen into his hand. "Give it back," the man called out. Ling Han rolled his eyes, and asked, "Is there something wrong with your head?" "Brat, are you planning to seek your own death?" that man asked darkly. "You speak as if you had not meant to kill me just now, and was merely playing around with me." Ling Han shook his hand, and waved the whip so that it flicked towards the man. Because the whip's body was entwined with metal, it became the best conductor for lightning. The whole whip had turned white, lightning twined densely around it, and ancient patterns flickered on it. "Fuck," the man cursed. There was lightning all over this place, which doubled the power of any thunder-aligned cultivator. They would be able to guide the surrounding lightning to complement their own attacks. Flower blossom tier cultivators could guide the surrounding spiritual chi to complement their own attacks, but this place had become an ocean of lightning. Cultivators aligned with any of the other 5 elements would not be able to borrow any kind of spiritual chi corresponding to their own elemental alignment, and would only be able to fight with their own power. This naturally was a great restriction on their battle prowess. But for thunder-aligned cultivators, this place was equivalent to a paradise. That man could only scramble backward so as to dodge this attack. Ling Han pursued him, and struck out again with his whip. His battle prowess had reached the peak of the spiritual infant tier, and added with the fact that there was lightning here to empower his own attacks, he was naturally capable of oppressing any spiritual infant tier cultivator unless the latter, too, possessed a thunder-aligned spirit base. How would that man be able to defend against him? Ling Han pursued closely, and the man retreated successively. The whip shot out with pops and cracks, and as lightning wrapped around it, it was a very terrifying thing to behold. The man's head was entirely covered with cold sweat. The lightning here was extremely terrifying, and like wading through a muddy swamp, every step was a difficult one to take as one had to defend against the surging ocean of lightning. This would consume greatly both one's origin power and stamina, which was why there was need to take a rest every few steps. But now, a whip was striking above his head like crazy, without giving him any time to breathe. Thus, he could only scramble forwards like a crazed dog. He could be no more battered than this. Damn it! Damn it! That man felt incredibly angered and humiliated. Brat, don't go too far. I am a member of the Li clan of the Iron Tree Silver Flower. Our patriarch is an ultimate elite of heaven tier that the whole world reveres. Oh, I'm so scared. As long as I kill you, I would remove any possible future threat. Ling Han said, smiling, striking out with the whip even faster. The man released a growl of humiliation. As people passed, many had witnessed his miserable appearance, and those looks of peculiarity were enough to make him feel incredibly furious and ashamed. Chapter 644, Someone Interferes. Poor man, there wasn't even any cursing heard from him now, because he could barely breathe now. If he did not run, he would be struck with the whip, and not only would it cause heart-rending pain, it would even numb his entire body, so he couldn't even breathe. But if he ran, the lightning here was really too terrifying, which tired him greatly, and he was now entirely covered with sweat like it was raining. He was about to collapse from exhaustion. In terms of stamina, he was only slightly superior to any other person. How could he last under such torment? Body arts are really quite important. Ling Han nodded internally, instantly feeling that it was no loss that he had spent so much time on the indestructible Heaven Scroll and the 9 Dragons Tyrant art. If he wanted to become a truly outstanding elite, he had to reach perfection in every aspect. Otherwise, you might look disdainful in this situation, but in another situation, it'd be game over for you. What kind of elite would that be? Don't hit me anymore, that man pled. He was really about to become a dead dog now. He looked as if he had been fished out of the water as his whole body was covered with sweat, and even his clothes had become wet. But he did not even have the time to curse, and could only continue to flee endlessly. You tell me not to hit, and I should obey? Who do you think you are? Ling Han asked calmly. Did everyone think he didn't have a temper? On the other hand, if he, who had been the Alchemy Emperor in his last life, really wanted to throw his weight around, it would be a bigger temper tantrum than anyone else. Pa, pa, pa. The whip struck a successive series of blows. The man began to throw up blood not because he had been whipped, but because he had overexpended his stamina, and was overloading his circulation. Isn't this Li Yuanming? There were 3 people who were resting some ways ahead, and when they saw that man, they stared blankly at first, thinking where had this beggar come from, but upon a closer look, they discovered it was actually someone familiar. Brother Chao Heng. Brother Chao Heng. When the man saw the speaker, he instantly felt as if he had seen his savior. He hurriedly leaped over, and was about to break into tears in his excitement. "Brother Chao Hang, save me." One of the three people, a tall and sturdy man, stood up and made way so that Li Yuanming could duck behind him. He then raised his hand to catch the whip, and said calmly, "Young man, anyone can make mistakes. You should forgive them when possible. Don't be so pleased as to lose your own sense of measure." There was actually lightning also twined around his hand, but it was not white in color. Instead, it was blue. The whip fell, and the sturdy man took hold of it. The blue-colored lightning instantly crept up the whip, heading to attack Ling Han. Ling Han abandoned the whip, and stood with his hands placed behind his back. At the first glance, it was obvious that the sturdy man had the upper hand as he had forced Ling Han to abandon the whip. This was normal. He was a high-level spiritual infant tier cultivator, and in terms of density of origin power, it was obvious that he had more of an advantage. However, power and battle prowess were two different things. Ling Han's battle prowess was better shown through his use of 3 mystical powers, the indestructible heaven scroll, his sword techniques, the 10 spiritual flowers, and his strong physique. If he were to compete with a spiritual infant tier cultivator with brute force, that would really be comparing his weakness to his enemy's strength. Previously, Li Yuanming had been subdued by the lightning in this area, but this sturdy man himself had a thunder alignment, and was naturally unaffected. On the other hand, there was an upgrade to his battle prowess. "Kowtow and apologize to Brother Yuanming, and I can spare your life," the sturdy man said. His voice boomed, like it was the sound of thunder. Though Li Yuanming was internally very displeased, and would prefer to kill Ling Han, it was already very nice of his acquaintance to give him a hand. It would not be proper for him to ask for too much. After all, he was one of the stronger members of this adult generation of the Zhao clan. The Hand of Thunder, Zhao Chaohang, was considerably superior to himself, both in terms of reputation and status. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, "You are not even familiar with the ins and outs of the story, but still command me to kneel and apologize. What a tyrant." "So what if I am a tyrant?" Zhao Chaohang asked coldly. It was not that he had very close relations with Li Yuanming, but both of them came from parties that possessed heaven tier level power, and thus, belonged to the same circle. The fact that Li Yuanming was thrashed like a dog was enough to cause him embarrassment as well. Thus, he definitely had to get him out of this predicament. "Then, we'll fight." Ling Han was unafraid, and raised his fists. He was only playing around when he was waving the whip, so how could he have possibly shown the true level of battle prowess? Zhao Chaohang laughed loudly, and said, "You were able to suppress Brother Yuanming merely because this is an area of lightning, and thus you gained a natural advantage. However, I too am thunder-aligned. In that case, cultivation level would be the deciding factor. I am in the spiritual infant tier, and furthermore, am in the 9th layer, so what do you have that could allow you to fight me? From my point of view, I think you are in the 9th layer of the chattiness sect." Ling Han teased. "If we're fighting, then let's fight, but you're still noisy. Tell me, what else could you be but in the chattiness sect?" Zhao Chaohang's expression darkened. He casually tossed the whip back to Li Yuanming, and gripped his hands into fists. Pa, 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 the sound of his knuckles cracking was endless, and his whole body of muscles vibrated, showing that the power of his physical body was extremely shocking. Ling Han nodded internally. They were both from a powerful party, and were both at the peak of spiritual infant tier, but Zhao Chaohang was a dozen over times stronger than Li Yuanming. That was because even in a party with heaven tier level power, their resources would still be limited. Thus, these resources could only be concentrated on developing and nurturing those clansmen that had outstanding natural talent. As a result, though Li Yuanming's cultivation level had reached the spiritual infant tier, his battle prowess was appalling. This Zhao Chaohang could not be underestimated. Ling Han similarly stretched out his tendons. Cracks that sounded like thunder rang out from within his body. Furthermore, it was even more astonishing than Zhao Chaohang, and the noise was enough to make one's heart explode in their chest. They both cultivated body arts, but the 9 Dragons tyrant art originated from the 12 palace halls, and was definitely in the immortal grade. Wasn't that awesome enough, and sufficient to suppress all other kinds of body arts in quality? Zhao Chao Heng's expression changed slightly. He cultivated a body art, and so knew very well what astronomical sacrifices one had to make to cultivate body arts at the same time as normal cultivation. Firstly, there were not that many body arts techniques. If one were to cultivate a poor quality body art, it would be better not to learn in the first place, as it would be a pure waste of time and energy. Secondly, the moment their physique was established, the need for natural treasures would be too high, and the further they advanced, the more shockingly high their needs would be. Even for a party with heaven tier level power, they could only choose about 5 clansmen every generation to nurture. But this young man was obviously younger than himself, and had a lower cultivation level than his, yet had surpassed him in body arts. This was something he could not accept. Could it be that he had come from an even more powerful party? It was the first time that Zhao Chaoheng felt that this was a troublesome matter. Perhaps he had really caught a hot potato with his interference this time, but now that things had progressed so far, he could no longer step back, and could but grit his teeth and continue. "Make your move," he said. "You are only in the flower blossom tier, so I'll let you have the first 3 moves. You can choose to back out of a difficult situation. I only ask you to apologize to Brother Yuan Ming, and this matter would be considered over." Unconsciously, he had already conceded, and made no more demands for Ling Han to kowtow and apologize. Ling Han merely had to apologize so that he could keep his pride, and that would be fine. Yet Ling Han smirked coldly. Why did he have to give him face? Face was not something to be given by others, but to be earned with one's own power. With a long whistle, he shot out an attack at his opponent, and said with a smile, "If you allow me to have the first 3 moves, I fear that you would have no chance to make your own move." "Heng, I said I would allow you the first 3 moves, and I will." Zhao fuck." Zhao Chaoheng's expression changed drastically. Ling Han delivered a punch, and a dragon image of about 30 meters in height appeared. It was pale gold in color, and there was lightning entwining its entire body, which made for an incredibly terrifying sight. He hurriedly raised his fist in a counterattack. Too strong, he was really too strong. If he really allowed Ling Han to have the first 3 moves, he would be completely suppressed by the latter, and he would have absolutely no chance to make a comeback ever again. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.